What is up, guys? Welcome to the Unfazed Facts Podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge. I am one of your hosts, Joshua Benson. I'm here with my co-host, Jeff Baisch, and we have Ben Morse on again. And Ben Morse is now a crowned heavyweight champion. He is ready. He's playing your favorite Pokemon, the Unfazed Fat Snorlax. And he's a sponsored athlete, or a sponsored TCG athlete by Unfazed Facts Podcast. He really loves Snorlax, and just did really. Oh yeah, give us a cheer, Ben. Give us a cheer. Give us.
Why does it only do it sometimes? It only does it sometimes.
It didn't work. That was a good effort right there.
Well, Ben, Josh forgot to mention that the Unfazed Facts sponsorship comes with absolutely no benefits, but if we do see you in person, I will give you a swift high five and potentially a bubbly water. That's all we've got.
Okay. I was gonna say this is news to me, this sponsorship, but appreciate it. So
you are required to mention us in all public appearances, though. All right, if you take a sip of that water, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, we can work on that contract after this for sure.
You may not know it, but you are being sent thoughts and prayers all of the time.
I'll take them. Why not?
And that is the perks. But anyways, we just came off a really fun GLC weekend. Not this last weekend, but the weekend before. Full Grip had their special release weekends again, where we had a big standard tournament on Saturday and a big GLC 1K tournament on Sunday. And it was super fun to watch. I believe we played like 8 rounds. Was it 8 rounds of Swiss and then 3 rounds of best of 3? It was really fun to watch. It was awesome. Really cool. It was a very, just very fun filled. I'm sure Ben has a lot of different things that we might go over today, or might not even go over at all. But other than that, those of us at home were, on the edge of our seats on a lot of those games. Some of those games came down to the nitty gritty. I know one, I think Ben's first one had me on the edge of my seat forever. And then I fell off of it at the very end of the game. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Talking about thoughts and prayers, at one point I was like, I think Ben is cooked. I think it was your first game against Trevor. I was just like in chat being like, there's no way Ben comes back from this one. Because you started off so strong, and then Trevor just came in and was like, punch you in the face. And then it came down these last couple of just insane turns. So I'm excited to hear kind of your thoughts on it. I won't spoil too much. But again, I told you, I was in chat. Ben is cooked. Then you won. So kudos to you, Ben.
Ben,
thank you.
Definitely. And we all know it's no secret. Ben won this entire tournament, and it was 125 players from all around, whether they be local to Akron or just all around the U.S. We had so many. Full Grip had so many players come in and play the Gym Leader Challenge format, and that's quite a feat to have. Just a fan-made format. People will travel hours, get flights, drive for several, maybe 2-day trips to go there and play Gym Leader Challenge. And I think it's really cool. Gym Leader Challenge is one of the coolest formats ever. Maybe better than Standard. Way better than Expanded, because Expanded is dead and crazy. But it's just a graveyard of powerful cards. But anywho, I think we need to start talking about that weekend a little bit more, Ben. And going into this weekend, I don't want to go over too much of your stuff, because Ben's got a video that he eventually, maybe, he said he started it, will get out and have for you guys. But anyways, one of the things that I was wondering, and you kind of told us beforehand, you played Colorless. Me and Jeff, I don't know how many other people knew, but we knew for a little bit that you were going to play Colorless. And I wanted to know that with Colorless having such a big target on its back, what in the world possessed you to play it? And what do you think possessed 35 other players to play it?
All right. Well, great questions. Yeah. So before our last podcast, which was a couple weeks before the tournament, before we hit record, I was like, all right, guys, not going to say it on the pod, but I'm going to play Colorless. And
Which is
I think that was like,
because like 2 days later, you were like, "Hey, everyone, I'm playing Colorless." You like commented in the Discord, like, "Hey, I'm gonna be playing Colorless." Like the bravado to just be like,
Right.
"Guys, it's so good. It's so good. Everyone can know what I'm playing."
Yeah, I leaked it. Yeah, I did leak it in the Discord a couple days after because as I thought about it more, and from when I told you guys, I was like, still kind of like deciding on the list and like maybe not fully committed to Colorless, but like I'm pretty sure I am going to play it. But like as the time went on, I was just like more and more convinced every day, just running through plays that it can do in my mind and like matchups and stuff. I was like, there's just like no world where any other deck really makes sense. And like, I don't even care if people know anymore because like it's like insanely powerful, especially right now. And the hops cards definitely I think do push it even further than it was before. And I mean, we all saw it over the course of the stream of the weekend. Fan wrote them, Hops Cramorant dominated, and so those two cards are absolutely insane. And yeah, so in testing, I was very committed to trying to find something that would, I'd feel really comfortable going into Colorless. So that was actually my number one goal, was to play a deck that I felt really good about winning against Colorless. And it turns out that the best deck to beat Colorless, in my opinion, is Colorless itself. With some special text thrown in there that we'll get to, I'm sure. But
yes.
So I just was like, Colorless has to be the move. And my list, I was like already at the point where I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure my list will look pretty different than what Turbo Colorless has been looking like before Journey Together. Not like extremely, it's all cards people are familiar with, but something that is a little bit of a twist that maybe people aren't fully expecting, that I just thought was like perfect into the meta that I was expecting. And I just felt really good about it, like talking with other players and like the Full Grip locals and Andrew and Alex and all of them. It's just like we just when we put the deck together and played some games with it, I think all of us were a little like blown away by it in a sense. Even before the tournament, we're just like, this deck is insane. Like this deck is like absolutely cracked. And yeah, so I locked in like more than a week before the tournament. I wrote my deck list like the Tuesday before the tournament, so like I didn't even consider changing any cards like that final week. So that's like just I don't think I've ever gone to like even a League Cup or challenge or anything like that where you have to write a deck list like that, convinced that the deck I chose is like, yeah, no question about it. I wouldn't change a single 60, things like that. So it felt really good and comfortable to go into the tournament with that mindset. And I was just, on Sunday morning, I was just like excited and ready to see what happened. And 125 players, 7 rounds, and we got there, man. It was sick. And it was a little hairy in the finals, and part of that was because of Trevor came up with something completely new that I had never played any games against, and ended up being really good. And so that finals match was really fun to kind of try and navigate that. And luckily we ended up coming out on top. So it was a fantastic weekend.
That is awesome. And you mentioned talking with Andrew or Alex, and I'm sure you mentioned a few others, but leading up to it, did you have like a testing group that you kind of trusted, or should we even talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, no, let's talk about it. So for a long time when the tournament was announced, I had a friend named Alex Holtz, so not Carpenter, but a different Alex who is actually a longtime friend of Andrew Mahone's. Lives a couple hours away in Ohio, but I'll see him every once in a while when we like get together to cube with Andrew. So he was planning on coming up for the 1K, and we message a lot about lists and stuff, and he really liked my Special Whales list that I won my badge with at Full Grip, around the time that the 1K was announced. And for a long time, me and him were working on that list to take to the 1K, because I think the week after I won with my list, he then lost to it at his locals and was like, this deck is sick. He's like, we should play this deck. And so we worked on that deck for a long time, me and him. And then he actually came out for a weekend just to test for the 1K. Just stayed at my house for 2 nights, and we just grinded games with the whales and up against what we thought would be like a good colorless deck. And while it performed decent, you just like could not deny how consistently powerful the colorless deck was in all of our games. And like, I think like 3 or 4 hours into our Saturday of testing, we were like, we need to play this deck. Like, like before we let the weekend like get away from us, of like being locked in on the water deck, let's actually dive in. Let's like treat the rest of Saturday as if we're going to play colorless, and like, let's work on this list. And so, we dove into that list for a long time, me and him. And, a lot of the deck still wasn't what it ended up being. But that at that point, I think this was about 3 weeks before the tournament, 3 or 4 weeks before the tournament, we made the switch. We're like, okay, like we're definitely playing colorless. Like, even though it's got the target on its back, I just think that it doesn't matter. Because if you build your deck so hard that it can only beat colorless, then it's going to lose to other stuff. So no one's going to really build their deck in a way where it's only beating colorless, where it plays every single tech. At most, people include like 2 techs in the list that they're going to tech for, right? Otherwise, it changes their game plan completely. So with that in mind, it's like we're pretty much just going to see like the list we're going to expect to see, with maybe like extra enhanced hammers, and maybe people find room for like Faba or whatever. Or like extra, more decks will run Parallel City and Avery, things like that. But at the end of the day, those are all things that you can deal with. And the colorless deck has the tools and the power and the speed to just outpace like every single deck. So we were like, yeah, this is definitely the play. Lock it in there. So from there, like he had to, he went back home. He's not out here until the 1K again. And at that point, it was like, I think that week that we had the podcast, and I was like, I'm probably going to play colorless. And then, I do other testing games and discussion just in general at Full Grip League nights on Thursday nights. And I'm pretty open there. I was pretty open there with everybody. And, I think everyone was pretty open with me. Like, I was asking people what they were going to play. And, JD was locked in on playing his grass list for, a couple weeks before the event. Alex and Hunter really wanted to play Lightning as soon as the event was announced. So I think these players have like a lot of pride in the lists that they built for good reason, that they were really excited to bring and show it off. So I was like pretty open about talking with them about what I was thinking and what I thought would be the right play. And then the week before the tournament, Andrew hosted a small group of people at his house to continue testing for the event. And it was there that we did like a round robin between like the 8 of us, and everyone, we were like, okay, everyone like play the deck that you think you want to play at the tournament. And like, let's just, go around, play a bunch of games and see how everything does. And, the standouts were definitely colorless and Alex's Lightning deck. Alex is just a beast with that deck. And to be honest, that's like the one deck that I was consistently losing to with the colorless
Really?
deck. So I was actually at the 1K. I was trying my best to avoid it the whole time because that was like the one matchup I was afraid with. And with the techs and the cuts I made, actually took a worse matchup into spread than other colorless decks. So I was like, just like, okay, I think we're maybe overestimating how much spread will be at the event. And luckily, I was kind of right about that. I ended up hitting one spread deck and was able to beat it, but that's just that was my thought. I was like, okay, like it's gonna be a little bit worse, but like colorless is still that deck, like you can still win, So that's why I felt like kind of fine about cutting all those things. So that was a long day that week before the event where we were finally talking more in like that bigger group, a lot of the full group locals and towards the end of the night when we were like finalizing the list, it was just me, Andrew, and Alex Carpenter running games and talking about it. And I think we had already kind of had the 60 from earlier in the day, but we were just jamming more focused games. And we were just like more and more convinced that like all these cards were like so good and like deserved a spot. And there was one testing game I had against Andrew's psychic deck. It was literally the first game after I added like all the techs. I had Lost Vacuum, Reset Stamp, Counter Catcher. I like added those 3 cards. And then the very first game I tested with Andrew with his psychic deck, there was a turn where I went behind on prizes like 5-4 or something, and he didn't have the strongest board. He had like Curlia, Malamar, and like he was attacking with I don't even remember what he was attacking with, Boulder or something. And I go Reset Stamp to 4 or to 3, Counter Catcher your Curlia, Lost Vacuum away your like Dimension Valley, and also play Raihan to get 3 energy on my Snorlax. And I was like, we were like, oh my gosh. And like from there, it was just like an easy sweep of a game. Like, it was insane, like to like see all the cards happen at like the same turn, like the minute I put them in. And I was just like, this deck is so broken. So that was pretty fun. And actually, Alex Carpenter, towards the end of that day, he was like, man, I should really play. Like, he was so close to playing the same 60. Yeah. And I think it was like the night before that he finally was like, I think I just got to run Lightning. But if you talk to him, he's like, yeah, I really wanted to run that. And like, and to be honest, so like everyone around me, me and Alex Holtz, like, started the conversation about colorless. But from there, everyone locally contributed. And, a lot of people, local colorless players, local full grid players who ended up playing colorless at the event, started including some of the same techs, but weren't playing the exact same 60. Like Ben Peacock, Dylan Ryan, Jack Martin, they were all also playing like the Lost Vacuum tech that we had decided to include. So I think I don't know everybody's colorless deck. There was 35 of them or whatever. So I don't know how many people that weren't full grip were playing Lost Vacuum. I would be really interested to see how many people were on Lost Vacuum, but it really felt like that was like a full grip decision. It's like, okay, we're all playing Lost Vacuum. So that was kind of the journey I went on. And I like so me and Alex Holtz and my good friend Tony, who is mostly a standard player, does have his colorless GLC badge at full grip, though, comes every once in a while. I gave him the 60 as well. So the 3 of us were the only ones on that exact 60. And I went 6-1 into top 8, and they both finished at 5-2. So both of them were only 1 game away from making top 8 as well. And I just, I think all 3 of us have said like this deck just felt like the best deck in the room for sure. Like it was crazy. So Yeah, it was a solid run, solid deck choice, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out.
I mean,
Man,
to put some more plaudits out there too for this list, wasn't it? It was Jack Martin, I think, this past week that ended up winning the full group locals, right? Which I know, again, you mentioned his list was slightly different. I think I saw Dodrio in his list too, but I mean, just like Colorless, man, so strong. And obviously, you guys have a strong core of Colorless players that are just wreaking havoc.
Other than you mentioned being like afraid of or like not wanting to hit lightning spread, which I hear that Full Grip and really loves spread decks, but Andrew may not like it as much. But did you expect to hit, any other weakness decks such as, fighting? And I'm pretty sure water can have a good matchup depending on, what type of version it hits. But did you expect to hit too many things even with that target? I know we talked about target, but was it kind of surprising that you didn't hit as many of those counter decks as you could have?
I think I hit about what I expected. Well, in terms of like overall count for the metagame, I was really surprised to see that there was only 3 fighting decks. That just felt crazy to me. I know we talked about it on the last podcast. Like that was like something I thought would have at least made, maybe 10, 15 decks out of.
You cut Lugia.
I know. Well, I don't. Right. I think Lugia stinks, but
I think so.
I don't like Lugia. I like Lugia the Pokemon. I don't like Lugia the card.
Lugia is only good in the Hitmons matchup, though. It's like only good. It like stalls like that entire deck out. I was like, no, Ben, cut it.
Right?
You didn't need it. You didn't need it.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is my round. There was only 3 fighting decks, but my round 1 opponent, my only spread matchup I hit was fighting spread round 1.
Really?
And
man.
and that was wild because it's round 1. I'm like, all right, this deck is sick. We're cracked. Like, let's go. We don't know the metagame yet, right? So I didn't know that there was only 3 fighting decks out there. I would assume there's more, but my opponent gets a mulligan, and I'm like, God, no! Like he's got like all the fighting cards in there and stuff. I'm like, oh no! So
yeah,
that was pretty funny to hit that.
Did you start to sweat a little?
I did.
You're like, ugh.
Yeah, I did. I was like, okay, like this is it. Like this is gonna be my day. But going back to like what you asked about, like what I would expect to hit anyways. I think we knew that Colorless was going to be number 1, of course. And so we were kind of doing some math in our head. We knew like there'd be a lot of Psychic, there'd be a lot of Water. Dragon's also really popular. Definitely, I think over appeared than I would have guessed. But to see it up there tied for second, there's a lot of them. And so when I was doing the math, talking with people, in 7 rounds, we were like, okay, we're going to expect to hit 3 to 4 Colorless, right? That leaves only like 3 to 4 other rounds of other types. And if like Psychic and Water, we think are like the next top 2 types after Colorless, and then it'll just continuously go down from there. I was like, realistically, like you might hit 1 spread deck. Yeah. Like, that's just kind of like where we ended up. And I'm like, so if you're only going to maybe hit 1 spread deck, then, you can lose 1 or 2 games and still make top 8. So we were like, forget that matchup. It's fine. Like into everything else, this deck is goated. So that's kind of like how we were judging like what to cut and what to keep and what matchups we wanted to help improve and things like that. And I ended up being like pretty much correct. I hit, I think, 2 to 3 Colorless decks. And I hit 4 Dragon decks in my Swiss rounds, which was crazy. I hit 1 Psychic. I didn't hit any Water. I didn't play against a single Water deck, which I'm not sad about.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been sad either.
Yeah, that is one of the harder matchups if they get a hot start, but it really requires them to have a hot start. And if they don't have a hot start, the matchup is fairly simple in my mind. But I was still happy to avoid it. But yeah, hit fighting spread round one, and luckily got a crazy win in that game, which I don't know if you guys want to hear the story about that, but
Go ahead.
So I played that game so extremely cautiously. I pretty much only had like Hops Cramorant and Fan Rotom down, which both resist fighting, right?
Yeah.
Those were like the only two Pokemon I had down for a while. And I was just like, as I was like kind of like setting up my pieces and like trying to draw into energy before I benched like a Snorlax or anything, I was just like, and my opponent didn't have like the best board going, but they were just hit and running for like the first 3 turns with the Hitmonchan into my Cramorant for 0 damage, and like would retreat into their doll, right?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't really, and Fan Rotom wasn't doing enough to take a knockout, and I really didn't want to knock out. I wanted him to be forced to discard the doll.
Yeah.
To like make a move, because I was like, he wasn't really playing any supporters, so I was worried like if I hit into the doll, he's gonna like drop a teammates or a Raihan or something, right? And like be able to set up. So I was like playing so extremely patiently. I was like, I'm just gonna wait till you make the first move. Like if you're gonna hit 90 damage on my benched Cramorant, and then like that's it, like whatever, you do that. You have nothing else going on, but I'm not really doing anything either, right? We keep going, and I get Snorlax going, and I get up ahead in the prizes like 3-5 or something. And after they finish their like second full combo with Hitmonchan on like 3 of my Pokemon or whatever, that none of them were dying to, I was like, okay, I have 3 prizes left. Now's when I go fast. I like bench like everything all at once, because I'm like, it'll take a while to get the combo back. So I go like Bidoof, like Squovit, like all these guys. And then my opponent makes like a cool play where they like double ping my Bidoof to kill it, I think, because like Bidoof had damage on it. Yeah. And take a knockout with like Lucario on my Snorlax. And they were able to like go down to like, yeah, I'm misremembering like the prize counts and stuff. But anyways, what happened was they end up skip ahead. We're down to 1-1 prize, right? And they had just taken their knockout. They had finally set up their Okie Dokie and had taken knockout on my Cyclozar with energy on it to go down to their final prize. And I had no energy in play at that point. I only had 1 prize remaining, and my final prize was my enhanced hammer. And so this Okie Dokie had 230 HP, and I couldn't get around it because if I wanted to reduce its HP, then I'd have to play Hex Maniac. But if I play Hex Maniac, then I'm not powering up enough energy onto anybody to take a KO.
Yeah.
So I could not. My only out was Escape Rope. I had to play Mela or Raihan, find a double energy, and find Escape Rope. Yeah. And I Mela onto my Cyclozar after I recovered it, draw 4 cards. There's like a special charge in that 4 cards. So I special charge all 3 double energies on the deck now. Yeah. And I nest stash, draw 3 with a Rangru, and like I was able to play like all those cards down. I think one of them was the double energy in those 3.
Yeah.
And then off of my Bieber to 5, I had the Escape Rope, and I hit it. So I just got like incredibly, like my opponent, was able. I thought I was playing like so cautiously and safe, and then
it just blew up from there.
The fighting deck could just like pop off out of nowhere with the Okie Dokie and stuff, and I'm like, So
golly, it was close.
I know
you had a long. Everything was like long. Everything was close, like all day. How did you get through that? What kept you going? What snacks, hydration, sleep?
Let me get my notes. Let me write this down first.
So, I mean, I didn't get a ton of sleep because I had played late the night before. Yeah. I got top 8 in standard as well. And then So I was late at full grip that day. I have like almost an hour drive, both, to get home. So home late the night before, up early the next morning. I had some toast in the morning that thankfully my wife made for me because I was running late. And I literally did not eat again until after the finals. I had a piece of toast at 9 a.m. and I drank water throughout all the Swiss rounds. And then I had a Gatorade in top 8. And that was it. And I was really just coasting off like adrenaline and hype and like, like after beating the fighting deck, which I was like felt so lucky to have squeaked out of. That was like that was probably my most memorable Swiss round because of like no other game really came like that close in Swiss. And after I won that one and I was like, okay, like now we can take it. Like fighting's behind me. I'm sure all the other fighting decks lost too. Like I'm not going to hit anymore. And we just ran the gauntlet from there, and things just like kept going, how I wanted them to, and the deck performed fantastic, and can't complain up until that one stream match in Swiss with Spence. But
that one was the game that got me on the edge of my seat right there. I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah, that game was fun. That game was super fun. So, but luckily, like one loss is not the end of the world. So
one loss isn't the end of the world for the world champion, man.
Yeah, we just kept it moving. That's right.
Now, Ben, you mentioned Gatorade. I need to know what flavor. I wrote everything else down. What flavor Gatorade was this?
I always go for just straight red, fruit punch.
All right, you hear it here first, chat. Fruit punch, the Gatorade flavor of champions.
That's right.
And don't forget the old water and toast fast as well.
Yeah,
the toast water fast.
Facts.
I was definitely hungry, but I could not stop. Had no time.
You're like, nope, I gotta go. And before we get started with like the deck list and all that stuff like that, I recently saw on the Discord Andrew calling you out for being a slow player. How do you respond to that?
Oh man, I get crap for this at League every week, and let me say, I'm not the slowest player. All right, I'm not gonna name any names, and there's more than one person. Like it's everybody, but people I think it really started actually when I first moved to full grip and I would play Lost Box, and I got a reputation very early on from Natalie, Andrew's wife, who like runs all the tournaments, of going to time every game with Lost Box. And so it's kind of like an inside joke at full grip now where I'm Ben Slow Morse or whatever, and it's like, oh, here goes Ben. And then there was a League Cup that I won, I think, like over a year ago with Gardevoir, where every game of top 8 also went to time. There was like 5 Gardevoirs in top 8, and so it was just like a ridiculously long night for all the staff because every single game was going to time.
Yeah.
And so, and because it's me, everyone's like, of course, Ben Morse going to time, Ben Morse going to time. And so, I mean, I will admit, like, I definitely, I do have to consciously remind myself sometimes during games, like, okay, like, wait, speed it up. Like, I definitely have slow moments. So I'm not saying it's not true, but I am saying it's been known to be overstated, maybe.
Hey, I 100% relate to it so much. Like whenever I went there and played with you guys, I think I went to game. I think we played 4 rounds that day, and I think I went to time 3 times. So if I was there, Ben, I would be the slow guy. And occasionally I'll make jokes to my opponent and say, "Hey, can we speed up the pace of play, please?" And it's usually just me, and I'm like, I also have to remind myself all the time to stay in it. I'm like, okay, make some decisions beforehand and, play them out. But usually what that gets me into is I've played it out in my head. I didn't play it out physically into the game state. and I end up making mistakes.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's kind of funny, but I play fast enough to get the dub, so it's fine.
Oh yeah, yeah. The champion can play as fast as he or she wants. So
I'll
good
say
stuff.
my favorite part of Thursday's Tricky Jim stream of the GLC FGG locals was, I think Mahone zoomed in on you. It was like, all right, everyone else is done. Like, let's wait for this last game. Zoomed in on you. I think you were playing Psychic that night. And it was just like, yeah, here's Ben. And then it's like, from that point on, it's like he's talking about the camera. It's like he and Alex Carper, like, what more could they talk about while you guys were playing and finishing up the round? So I love that. So I know Josh is a solo player. I've never gone to time before, ever. So I don't know.
Jeff, did you just say I know? Jeff, did you just say I know that Josh is a slow player?
Oh, Josh, come on, man! You remember those Twin Leaf matches that we had? I remember, like,
yeah, you'd always
sit here streaming here, and being like, I'm like, oh, where's the what can I feel this time? I'm not interesting enough for Josh's turns.
Wow, never going to time is crazy. I can't relate to that at all.
I'm a fast scooper.
Out there.
I value my time a lot, I guess is how I put it. But I'm a fast player. I'm a really, really fast player. But like I'm always playing like my own crazy brews too. So I usually know my own 60, and I'm usually playing against meta decks that I'm like, I know these cards. Like, I know all 60 of those cards. Like, I know what I'm dealing with. And if I make a mistake, just forgive yourself and be like, you know what? I probably should slow down. I'm not going to, but I should probably slow
down. Jeff values both time and crumble cookies with friends.
That's fact. Yes, I think I've told that story many a time. But yeah, made a top 4 of like a Gym Leader Challenge event in Augusta. And I was like, instead of playing my top 4 match, let's just go get a crumble cookie and go home. So I just go see to my friend and left.
All right. Hey, that's fine.
Wildest story ever.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the meta. Let's look at that meta right there. So we got, everybody knows this by now. That's a lot of Colorless. You guys ever watch Kung Pao? Watch it. It's a good movie. Anyways, that's a lot of Colorless. We got 34 Colorless. We got 16 Psychic, 16 Dragon, 14 Grass, Water, 13 Dark. And then we'll just kind of leave the rest there where they are. But some things that, just off the top of my mind here are, I'm not necessarily surprised about Psychic being so high as well, because I was thinking about it. I can't remember who I was talking about it with, but I was like, I think Psychic will be a good call kind of going into it, because it has a lot of good matchups, super well balanced, has the ability to kind of control the board state to a point and just kind of pick and choose when you want to do things. So Psychic right there. Dragon was surprising to have so many Dragon. I know that Dragon at other like ICs and stuff like that have been doing really well, but I was surprised to see so much like here to tie with Psychic. But like we said earlier, Ben, like I was really, really surprised to see like 3 fighting whenever, and even 5 lightning kind of going in, knowing that Colorless was going to be the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And that those are just some big things that like are all off the top of my mind for this meta at Full Grip, the 1K. So Jeff, Ben, what do you guys think about it?
I think so. Like when people say they're surprised about Dragon, I kind of get it, and I kind of don't. Because when I look at where Dragon has been over the last couple of years, like it has like one of the best built-in game plans for like dealing with big heavy threats. I mean, Garchomp's Sonic Slip ability is busted, and then you put that on a stage 1 that can search out your other Dragon mons too. Then you're punching twice into Colorless, maybe going 2 for 1 if they can't find the Gust. I mean, they're going to find the Gust, but if you can do that, and then like punching a Wailord twice with Garchomp, it's just built in. It's just a good card. So I get why a lot of people kind of gravitated to Dragon in this matchup. It's just kind of hilarious that the one Dragon deck that we're going to show you tonight wasn't playing Garchomp at all. So again, I will mention that. I think probably the other list, Ben, I imagine all 3 other Dragon lists you saw were probably playing Garchomp, right?
Yeah, I think outside of my game with Spence, every other deck was what you would think of when you think of Dragon.
Yeah. Psychic at 16 is a little surprising. When we knew going into it that, Colorless would be a top deck, and then Water maybe was this, second potential deck, I was kind of like, yeah, Colorless makes sense, but it doesn't have this high damage output that you really kind of need to kind of keep going with these big heavy hitters that those two decks typically have. Wobbuffet is just so good though, so I get why people gravitated to Psychic, but still, I don't know. Like we see one in the top 8 that we'll talk about here. Those are kind of like the surprisingness of this. To me, 14 grass is kind of crazy too, but I think a lot of people maybe just had their grass decks built and they were playing the standard event and then maybe kind of gravitated. Maybe that's the way I'm at least going to, talk about that, at least maybe justify that to a certain degree. But, meta looks good. Fighting, 3 fighting, Ben, 3 fighting. Where are my fighting players at? I'm so sad about this. I thought it would be kind of a decent call, but we talked about it too, Ben. One Marnie and your game plan's ruined. You can't even beat your weakness matchup. I mean, you took care of that guy in round 1. So, it's hard to trust. I would have played it, but that's where I'm at with the meta, Ben. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. To your point, I think Dragon. I'm less surprised that Dragon is high. I'm more surprised that Water is lower. And I think that's people that aren't choosing Water might be choosing Dragon, and that's like maybe where the numbers push Dragon up. So I'm not surprised that Dragon would be a choice for a lot of people, but to see it over Water is a bigger surprise, especially with all the discussion about the new Whale Lord. And I don't know, I maybe in my heart, I love Water decks. I thought more people would go to that. And like you said, especially crazy to see it at the same level as Grass, a deck that many people consider to kind of have fallen from grace. One thing that could contribute to this kind of spread, is something I mentioned on the last podcast is, a lot of these players might be purely standard players. And, this is Grass is the one deck they built years ago when when the format first was created. So they're like, oh, what's the new cards I put into it? Okay, great. Let's run that. I also know, some of my friends, a core group of them all ran the Egg Mill deck. So there was a good 3 players there that were playing the Egg control deck under Grass's banner. I heard one of my friends say that they saw someone playing a special Whales Water deck, but maybe 1 or 2 out there, so also not a very high play compared to something like, I think Hydro Pump was just the standard for most Water players. And Psychic, I think, is a deck I'm not surprised to see Psychic at the top. It was definitely what I would consider up there, and I also think part of the reason is because Psychic has a lot of different ways to be played, that there is a pretty diverse field of Psychic players. While they're all playing different decks, not everyone's playing the same Psychic deck, but there's a lot of people that are huge fans of Lost Zone Psychic. There's a lot of people out there that are huge fans of Monkey Dory Psychic. And so, I wonder if there was a Garbodor out there too. Who knows? So Psychic is, I think, more one of those types, especially compared to almost every other type, maybe except for Water in terms of deck diversity. So I'm not surprised to see it up there. I am surprised to see it tied with Dragon. I'm surprised the Dragon was up high enough to be basically second place. Lightning also surprisingly low, because 4 of those 5 were Full Grip players. So that out of and if Full Grip was making up 30 to 35 players of the 125, all these players that came and traveled in, one of them picked Lightning. So to me, that's even, when you think of it in terms that, we all knew Alex and Hunter and these other guys at Full Grip were going to play Lightning, so those numbers were there. But it's I would have thought it would have been a more popular choice among a wider range of players, because it is a good deck. It did make a top 8 spot. Cole got in there with the Lightning spread. So yeah, and yeah, fighting below Fire is definitely a choice that was made. And I said on the last podcast that there would be one fairy deck, and I was wrong.
Oh man, yeah,
no fairy first sad.
Yeah, but
piggybacking kind of off what you said too, Ben, we mentioned those top 3 types, colorless, psychic, and dragon. All 3 of those types really, really allow for skill expression. Especially if you're playing fast call dragon. So when I'm looking at those top 3, when I'm thinking about top players and what they want to play, it doesn't, going back on some of the things I said before, it does make a lot of sense why these 3 are the top 3. Again, these are the best players in the world trying to win $1,000. Play the 3 best decks that are going to let your skill shine through. Whereas maybe Lightning, you mentioned one other person, sprinting has some luck involved in it. And so, are people going to want to trust Zebstrika's sprint ability for 7 full runs? The same thing with fighting. At least with Macargo, you can put a card on top of your deck. Maybe that was going through those Fire players' minds when they were choosing that F over the superior fighting F.
Well, I will say that I think Fire players in general are very, very passionate about their type compared to other players.
Would you describe their passion as burning?
Exactly. I think, when you are a fan of the fighting deck, you are a freaking fan of it, because that deck is even worse than fighting now. And so if you're still playing that, it's just because you're in it for the love of the game, And one of my friends who came out, his name is Tony. He played on stream round 1 with his fire deck against Ben Peacock, and he was playing the score bunny and the
Libero Cinderace, I think, right?
Cinderace,
yes.
Cinderace, yep.
I love that match.
Yeah, so that's just always been his deck, his GLC deck, as long as I've known him. And so, yeah, it makes sense that that's the one that he wanted to play. So yeah, but this was the meta. Yeah, colorless definitely dominating in numbers.
Josh, any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, I to kind of build on the water point that Ben was talking about. It is surprising to see 14 water as opposed to something maybe in the 20s or high teens, something like that. But like you said, it could have been just the extra people wanting to play dragon. Maybe water players went to dragon, or maybe we're coping and just really sad that people didn't choose water. But especially with the new Waylord from Journey Together, people not playing that. And you mentioned that maybe just 2 special whales. I am, and yourself, Ben, are big fans of the big whales. Like, I've been a big whales fan for as soon as it came out. And anyways, it is very surprising. And if you ever see me at one of these tournaments, you can just know that I'm going to be playing a special whales variant. And I'm always going to do it. So you always know when I'm going to play with it. But yeah, that's good lineup. Very surprising lineup. It's always good to see a lineup that just kind of goes against what you think might happen, besides the whole colorless situation, like grass being tied with water. But other than that, it was fairly even, I guess you could say.
Which I think is pretty cool to see, for a tournament of this size, to know that, at least these top 6 types, barring the high numbers of colorless, pretty, if you could say, like, anyone who chose these top 6 types are people who were, like, potentially more locked in. Not saying that people who chose of course, people who chose lighting also were trying to win the event. Alex Carpenter's in that group. But to have, for players that are going and going to do their best and hoping to perform really well, the fact that this is the diverse spread that we end up with, still speaks to how cool of a format it is, and how good each of these types are, and especially in the diverse lineup that we saw that ended up in top 8. All these types except for grass, ended up in the top 8. So really cool. Any of those types could have ended up taking it home. And I think despite how overperforming maybe we expected colorless to be, fairly diverse top 8, fairly diverse field. So
yeah, I mean, in the top 8, we're going to see 2 completely different colorless lists. You're going to see 2 completely different dark lists. I mean, they have very similar game plans and what they're trying to do, but like you touched on it, and the uniqueness not only of what the meta looks like, but also even within that meta, you've got specific deck archetypes that are really shining through. And I mean, let's hop into that if you guys are ready.
We're ready.
Obviously, top 8, Josh, I'll let you talk about it.
All right. So we have the top 8 gym leader challenge. This is besides the top 8 and our, names with the records and stuff. Andrew Mahone made this live for anybody that wanted to see it. See how to make a bracket such as this in Adobe Photoshop software. So go there, head there. It's on the Twitch VOD. You can go watch free webinar for how to make this bracket. But from here, we have Ben Morse with Colorless, Brooke Lynch Psychic, Connor Cochran with Dark, Cole Stiletto with Lightning, Trevor Redding with Colorless, Joseph with Water, Thomas with Dark, and Spencer with Dragon, and Ben Morse with a record of 9-1, and the rest, 8-2, 7-2, 6-1, 6-2, and so on and so forth. But kind of going into these deck lists here in a second, we can thank, both Natalie and Eric Weeder. Some of you know him, kind of getting all these deck lists, these pictures and stuff together so that we can actually bring you this information. You go to Cardboard Warriors. Weeder made an article about all of the deck lists as well. And then Natalie, putting in all that hard work of being able to make this a smooth tournament. But going into our runner-up, we have Trevor Tankman with his very, very experimental, really cool colorless deck. And before I get too much into it, so I can give you guys some time to talk about this, I'll just bring up one thing: Dubwool. And I'm a very big fan of Dubwool and its ability to just be a free boss for that round. And then you have Devolution Spray and Scoop Up Net to be able to devolve it or take it up from the active or wherever you put it and be able to use it again and again. So it kind of gives you some extra, it doesn't take your supporter for turn and allows you to have some flexibility with what you're able to do. But I know that Ben had some very close combat with this specific deck because, again, he is the champion. But going up against this deck, Ben, what are some things that really kind of stood out to you besides some of those packages that we talked about?
Yeah, so one thing that I'd love to talk about is you see the 4 fire energy with the Mela and the Raihan combo. And one thing a lot of Turbo Colorless players debate about is, outside of Raihan, which is your other basic energy accelerator? Is it going to be Mina from deck? Some people have talked about going Crispin, making maybe a split of fire and fairy, or maybe 4 different energies completely. But both me and Trevor went straight Raihan, Mela, and I think that's the correct decision. I think Mela is the best one of them, and because I think my reasoning for that is because if you play Mina, a lot of the people that justify Mina say oh, you want to use it turn 1 or turn 2 to get Snorlax going really soon. And while it is great for those options, it's not really needed. The deck is fast enough to find those attachments early, and the deck is fast enough to attack with Fan Rotom that you don't really need to rely on Mina. But sometimes you need to rely on that extra energy attachment at the end of the game. And that's why Mela, I think, should be the one in the deck. Crispin, similar to Mina. I actually think Crispin is probably better than Mina if you just go a wider, more diverse energy count. I toyed around a lot with playing 4 different basic energies in Crispin before switching back to Mela, actually, because finding the extra energy to hand is pretty cool. But yeah, so I really like to see that Trevor also locked in on that Mela. And another card that I really wish I could have fit into my list is the Avery as well, when you're also playing Parallel City. because those, I think, bench limiting in going up leading into the tournament, the bench limiting options of Parallel and Avery, I was 100% convinced every deck should play at least one, because it's really strong against Colorless because they play pretty limited recovery options. And it's really strong against like Water and Psychic, which I thought would be like the next two types. So, and if you are able to fit in both, then even better, right? So I really actually wanted to try and fit Avery into my Colorless list and just wasn't able to find a spot for it. But I really like in Trevor's list that, you know, with the Pelipper package, he was able to find room for both of those. And I can imagine that it treated him really well throughout the course of the tournament. I believe I got hit with an Avery against him. I'm not, you know, the events of the finals are almost a blur to me because of one, how long the day had been, and two, like how much like I was just locked in and like just like focused on my action. Like a lot of it kind of just went over my head. But I'm pretty sure you hit me with an Avery, and I actually got in Brooke's deck that I'm sure we'll talk about, her Psychic deck. I got hit with an insane Avery in our top 8 match. So Avery is a busted card, and I thought really good for the meta. So those two things, you know, outside of, you know, like you said, the double Pelipper package, are things I think are just overall really strong for the Colorless deck that, you know, I was right there with him and think those cards are great.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really, really like about this list, and one of the reasons I like your list a lot too, Ben, which of course you're going to talk about in a second, is that like we underestimate how busted Gust is over and over again. And effectively, like this deck has, you know, double. We've got Boss's Orbs, we've got Guzma, you got Pelipper that can get it back. Then you've got Scoop Up Net or Devolution that can get it back again. I imagine Tankman just abusing Boss's Orders like all day. And that's when I see this list, that's what I immediately think of. Then second thing is, hey, no Turbo Energize. Like it just wasn't necessary. You see that switch outs were really, really important for Trevor here. Obviously, no Bird Keeper, which I know does find itself in a lot of these lists. Obviously, Avery, the draw 3 plus effect option being chosen here. But like Jet Energy, no Therapeutic, just switch out your Snorlax. And that's what Tankman went with here. Then you've got Float Stone and Air Balloon opting for no U-turn board, which, Ben, I know that you think U-turn board is probably the most important tool in these Colorless decks. I know you've mentioned it a couple times. Do you think that was a decision that was going through Trevor's head? Like, why not run U-turn board? I know he's got a couple of beefier boys up here, but U-turn board is just so good, right?
Right. I think with his list specifically, this is correct. It's U-turn board is correct in most other Colorless lists because it's the only tool retreat they play, right? And most decks are only playing one field blower, right? So if you're in Trevor's shoes, you know, after they hit the first tool retreat with their only field blower, then you're safe to put the other one on, and you can kind of skate by with those two. And with Pelipper and Dubwool being huge parts of your game plan, those both have 2 retreat costs. I agree with his decision 100% to just run the air balloon and the float.
Yeah, seems right. I will say that, like, the other thing, again, the fighting player in me saw this list and was just like, man, Pelipper does 90, and that's Hitmonchan, Hitmontop, Halucha, that's Riolu and Machop. It's like this, all those fighting basics plus the resistance coming from now Fanrotom, Cramorant, plus any damage gets on them, you could just scoop up the Pelipper or put it back down. Like, I saw this as like fighting's worst nightmare. And I'm wondering if that went through Trevor's mind as he was tanking, because obviously he's got Colorless on the brain too, but it looks like maybe some fighting came into his mind as well. So I love this list. I grew up, and I say grow up, but when I was playing GLC, like my first couple of days, like Tankman was synonymous with Grass List. And so like when I went to like Limitless and saw tournament results, I would go and I'd find Tankman's Grass List, and that was the list I knew to play. So it is awesome to see Trevor popping back up. I know since PTCGO has gone away, I've seen less and less of him. So to see him on stream, to see, you know, the 2 or 3 games that he got was just like, oh, like I had like, was just in there like, that's a hero. It was so awesome to see.
Yeah, he definitely proved himself for, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th time how great of a deck builder he is in GLC. came out to play with this list that I don't know if anyone else had on their radar. And yeah, it's the looking at the list, it's super strong. He put it, he made something that definitely went the distance. The Pelipper, with the double, I think synergized really well. Because I've always thought Pelipper is really strong, and it obviously is really strong. Being able to search for your deck or discards pile for a supporter is crazy. And I just was like, I can't fit it into any colorless list because then I'd have to run like Scuba Net and Devo. And if I'm running just those two cards for just Pelipper, like that doesn't feel very good. And so the fact that Trevor put it together that like, oh, now both of these cards are also busted with double, and to fit all that together so nicely, and to see him rewarded for that decision, I think is really sick. I think this list is awesome. I would recommend anybody pick it up if you're interested in a kind of a different way to play Turbo Colorless. Another interesting choice is that Ditto, the transformative start Ditto. It's just, Trevor recognizing how important that first turn is, of course. Another out to Fan Rotom. Or something else if you need it. If you find Fan Rotom naturally, Ditto can swap in and be your Snorlax, that normally you can't find off of Fan Rotom. So I can imagine, and even in games against me, he started a Ditto in one of our games, and it's just, another out to one of the most broken cards in the format. So really cool inclusion there. Not something I had really considered. So yeah, this whole deck is just really sick.
Yeah, it's kind of like playing your deck with 59 out of 60 cards if you start with it. It's really one of those cool cards. But something I wanted to bring up is that I didn't know Jeff grew up with Trevor Tankman as, like, how
Jeff
old are you?
Yeah, Jeff is like 5 years old right now.
Three or 4
years old.
3 or 4. 3 or 4. Yeah.
I didn't know that I had such a young co-host. It's amazing what you've done.
Don't tell anyone, because I think Twitch has really, really strict policies on minors. So.
And I was going to say is I find it interesting when people play that ball card that says flip 2 tails, but that's just me,
You got to when you're playing Pelipper and double, right? Like when you have on play abilities, like you got to play Timer Ball, right? I mean, I hate it too. You guys know me. I hate Timer Ball. It's awful. Again, it's just more confirmation bias. Like when you hit tails, it's just so negative, right? But you got on play abilities. You got to do it. So I like that. And
you
also,
haven't got it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you don't got to do nothing.
Well,
that could be an evil soda.
He won. We did. I guess Ben can tell us whether or not Trevor should be playing Timer Ball or not. Well, I'm not going to put him in that spot though. I already made him talk about air.
Nobody can convince me. Nobody can convince me that Timer Ball is a real card ever.
Josh, we need to do a Timer Ball conquest where I force you to play Timer Ball in every single deck, and you have to force me to play some card that I hate.
Kofu.
I'll play Lost City in every single one of my
I'll just make you play Kofu, and that way you get to play it with a not so great card, but you love it.
Hey, what can I say? That's all Gym Leader challenges for me. Playing with not so great cards that I love.
All right. It's getting a little heated in here. All right, we got the champions. The champ is here. Ben Morse. This is going to be his deck right here. And, with all these tech options, I know that this has been probably one of the more bigger talks of this deck that you brought with is basically, you mentioned it earlier, a deck to beat the deck, which is colorless, and knowing that you can just, if you can utilize these cards with any other matchup, awesome. But these cards are definitely the best matchup against other colorless decks. Ben, tell us about your choices and why you made them.
Absolutely. So, yeah, going into it, new colorless was the deck to beat, of course. And if you want to beat it, if you are the colorless deck, so there's 2 ways your game can go. Most of the time, your game plan is to just go faster than your opponent and win and take 6 prizes before they do. Now, the question is, in the ways the Turbo Colorless deck was built before, what cards were still in there that, like, if you were going faster, aren't necessarily needed, right? And the answer to that was, all the HP boosting stuff. If you're already going faster, and even if you're trading 1-for-1 prizes, HP boosting stuff doesn't help you go even faster. It does help maybe you slow down your opponent at all. But those HP boosting tools in that instance, I think, are attempting to be comeback cards, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to be coming back. And if I am coming back, I think maybe a more aggressive strategy to come back is required against other colorless decks who are trying to go faster than you, right? And when your colorless deck plays Pokemon like Hops Cramorant and Hops Snorlax that can so easily hit for 180 or 200 damage, and your HP boosting tools are putting you at 180 or 200 damage, how helpful are they really in coming back against a colorless deck that can hit over them, right? So I was like, those tools can go. If I want to come back against the colorless deck, I've said like the bench limiting stuff was really important, so I need that option to come back. I need a parallel city. A lot of colorless decks, if you parallel them, they'll keep maybe all their support Pokemon. Maybe they'll discard their attackers that don't have energy on them, right? Because they have that Squovit with the U-turn board on it. They'll just rebench their next attacker and fully power it up on the next turn. So after you parallel them, now how do you stop them from getting into their attacker? You got to take out the U-turn board, right? So Lost Vacuum is like the only way to do that. Faba is an option, of course, but and Faba is good because it's like the flexibility of hitting special energies, but it's like I don't want to use that as my supportive return, and I don't necessarily with Enhanced Hammer I don't necessarily need to be hitting more special energies. I need to be I really just cared about denying the pivot, which I found to be so important for colorless decks because of the need to recover their attackers and the need to like very carefully have enough energy attachments for those attackers before you bring them into the active, right? So if all their attachments have to go to a Snorlax, they don't have that extra attachment to also be retreating. So I thought Lost Vacuum was an incredibly strong card that could contribute to colorless whiffing a turn more so than me playing an HP tool. Because then if I'm playing an HP tool, that's still giving my opponent a way to get around it, right? They have a turn to respond to it. But if I hit their U-turn board at the right time, that's me also putting it on them maybe in a more disadvantageous position, in my opinion. So the Lost Vacuum definitely pulled its weight. I think it was an incredibly strong card. And then when you have both Field Blower and Lost Vacuum, all these other colorless decks that I figured would still be playing the HP tools, I don't even have to worry about them. I can save both of those. If I'm not able to hit the U-turn board, I can save the Lost Vacuum for the cape at the end if I need to, right? I can be more free with my early Field Blower, which honestly was a huge weight off my mind.
Yeah.
Because going into a lot of these matchups with only one Field Blower, you end up holding it for a long time because there's one specific thing that they could hold in the back that could beat you, right? So you end up holding it and holding it and holding it and waiting for them to drop the Lux Cape or their own parallel that you've already used your stadium. So I'm going to need to counter parallel later. So you're holding all these cards. So even against other types, including colorless, being able to just instantly drop the Field Blower on my turn 2 or turn 3, to me just opened up more aggressive lines of play. I think it would catch my opponents off guard, and then they'd also, assuming my only Field Blower was gone, drop all their tools, and stuff, and then hit them with the Lost Vacuum later. So it opens up this, when Lost Vacuum was more unknown, now it's kind of out there. But at the time, I don't think it was something a lot of players were ready to be playing around. So the bench limiting and then the pivot limiting I thought were really strong ways to come back against a colorless deck. And then as a last ditch effort to come back against the colorless deck, end game, you need to be able to either hex or KO their Bibarel and hopefully put them to a low hand size, right? And if you also have to play like something like Raihan or Mela, it's impossible to do all of those things without the item cards of Reset Stamp and Counter Catcher. So the bottom row of my item cards there are like the double tool removal, the Reset Step, Counter Catcher, and Enhanced Hammer. That's my colorless comeback extravaganza plan. You know, all those cards give me so much freedom to find different lines to come back rather than hoping that an HP tool will be enough, or hoping that a KO on a Bibarel without like a Hex or without a Raihan is going to be enough. You know, you're not as locked into these really rigid plays that I think Colorless was kind of locked into before, where you kind of just hoped your opponent wasn't going to have the answer to beat you. It's like, no, I want to be able to have, you know, several answers depending on what situation we find ourselves in. And so that's kind of where our deck building philosophy was, and it ended up, you know, being really strong. Had to cut some like Mallow and Lana is something like a lot of colorless players play. That ended up getting cut as well. And people are like, but Ben, your Hop Snorlax is going to KO itself. And then to that, I say, that's fine, because if it survived in the first place, it means I'm winning.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't have to heal that guy. And if I don't, you know, there's I'm going to be going faster. I'm going to have routes to come back if I need to. KOing myself or taking a turn off to, like, I don't have the HP tools, so like I doubt I'm going to be tanking a bunch of hits anyways. And in me building my deck this way, what also happened was now all those cards in my opponent's deck ended up basically being dead cards against me. So their Mallow and Lana, their Field Blower, because I don't play a lot of HP tools, like their Field Blower is pretty much only good against my Parallel City. All their HP tools, their Mallow and Lana, all those things found no use in any of their games against me, because I'm always taking a one-hit KO. You know, I'm not swinging into tools, except in my finals match against Trevor. Okay. That's a different story, though. But the tool didn't even save him there. I actually, at the moment I'm talking about, I swung into his Snorlax for 140 damage that had a tool on it. So I wouldn't have knocked it out anyways. But yeah, so all this, you know, my goal was like, I want to have the aggressive cards that the passive cards of Turbo Colorless before are going to be pretty much negligent, you know, or useless against. And I'm really happy with how it ended up turning out. And we've talked a little bit about the Turbo Energize, and I have said that if I would change one card, it would be that card. And surprisingly, almost everyone I've talked to has said the same thing. Like, I found like no use of that card throughout the whole tournament. You know, all the local Fulgur players that played Colorless were saying the same thing. Like, did you even use this card? Like, I used it one time at the end of a game, not even at the beginning of the game. I never used it to start a game. It just like never really turned out that way based on my board or based on what I wanted to attach to or who was in the active or if I was attacking with Rotom or anything like that. So it just never really fit the moment. And I would say if I were to cut that, I would have liked to have a muscle band just to add to that aggression. You know, a little bit more damage on Cyclizar is good. A little bit more damage on Fan Rotom is really good. So that's the one card I'll say maybe not the perfect 60, but damn, it was close.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that being helpful, adding muscle band over turbo energize, because right now, like you said, I don't think it's the time. Maybe in the future, depending on what decisions are made, with some of these energies in the deck list, turbo energize might be one of the new cards, or one of the cards that you might put back in. But definitely, muscle band is something that I think is definitely good, especially in your like water matchup, because water, they have the big whales that can really tank a lot of damage. And a lot of the time, if you do go into it, which you probably wouldn't, with your Hop Snorlax, attack into that, because then you're just hitting them for some good amount of damage, taking damage yourself, and then they might be able to knock you out with something a little bit weaker, But yeah, I can kind of get on board with that. That was really good. I was going to ask about level ball, but then I remembered that you have that fan in the deck, and it really does help out a lot
and
going into this.
Cinccino
and Cinccino. Yeah. I don't think that you need it, and I think level ball being the cut is definitely smart. Most people, like myself, would definitely keep that in, because I just can't get myself to cut a level ball regardless, But some people are braver than I, and that's definitely good. But I noticed something as well, that you prioritize, being able to either recycle supporters or be able to get trainer cards that you might need, whether that be using Poke Gear to be able to get the supporter that you need for that turn, being able to dig through that with Squovit, Bibarel, Cinccino, Instrunk, Oranguru, Poke Gear. So there's always a time that you're always trying to dig and be able to find that one or two cards, like you mentioned in your first match, where you had to dig to get your escape rope. And what was the other thing? Energy or something like? Oh yeah, your double colorless energy. So that's definitely, like, for this specific tournament, and you winning, like you said, might not be the perfect 60, depending on how that energize and muscle band switch would have been, but definitely perfect enough to be able to get you some extra moolah for that weekend. Did that extra moolah go to your wife's business that she does?
No, she makes enough on her own. She can. She has a separate thing. She's got that.
That's Ben's Pokemon money.
It's actually probably going to go to some flights to Oregon for my grandpa's birthday. So
sweet, that's awesome. That is really awesome, actually.
So cute. And
yeah, you should put that in your whenever you get your video going. You should put that in there as like part of the story.
Not a bad idea, get that emotional hook. But
yes, 100%.
Yeah. I do want to call out a specific card. Cypher Maniac is like an MVP in the colorless deck, especially in Cinccino builds. I'm partial to Cinccino over Dodrio. I don't really think Dodrio to me does not draw enough, and the low energy cost is made up for with Cramorant now. So I don't necessarily think Dodrio is better than Cinccino. The extra draw is just so good, and Cypher Maniac is incredibly powerful. And like, if it wasn't there, it would be Teammates, to find the two specific cards you want. But it effectively acts like a Teammates while not having to get KO'd. So it's like, if you go first and you fan road them, and you can grab the Minccino and the Cinccino, turn 2, your first supporter for turn can be that Cypher Maniac. And oftentimes, that's what would find me Bibarel and double colorless or something like that. And so almost always guaranteeing to get Bibarel up as soon as possible, and also finding the double energies when I need them. And mid to late game, I'm finding Reset Stamp, Counter Catcher, Enhanced Hammer, Lost Vacuum with that card, on top of also a double colorless energy, So it's just so versatile with your draw engine to be able to grab whatever two cards you need. And it just felt incredibly strong all weekend. I opted not to play both Cypher and Mallow my thinking there was that if you go second and it's your first turn, it is a pretty weak first option because you're not drawing cards yet. And you don't want to, I didn't necessarily want to get stuck with those more often, but seeing how good it performed, like it was crazy. And I did take that from the EUIC winning list, who played both Cypher and Mallow. And I really liked, and liked that idea enough to include one of them. And it was honestly incredible. So crazy good card.
Was the choice helping you make that, whether playing Cypher Maniac or Mallow, is what full art that you had?
100%.
That was a little pricey. Isn't Mallow like $60-$70? That might even be.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. Cypher Maniac was like $8 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now,
but yeah, 100%.
One of the things I really like about your list, Ben, you mentioned getting rid of Mao and Lana. So, what's your second tag team? And really, there's only one other option when Mao and Lana's off the board, right? It's Cynthia and Caitlyn. But like your deck, and Josh touched on the ability to find supporters. But I mean, Cynthia and Caitlyn plus Power Pad plus ES Seeker, these cards all put you in a way to recover supporters. And then you look at like, oh man, like Raihan and Mela are just extra attachments, which like every time I played this deck, I'm often just like, I'm going to use this draw engine to just get me another attachment. Well, hey, you kind of have that built in. Did you really find that to be one of the strengths of this deck? And one of our viewers is asking in the chat here, talk about Power Pad. So talk about the way that you recurred supporters throughout your game. Or games this weekend or this last weekend.
Yeah, all the supporter recursion and the options to find them are just clutch, because you really want to, if you're having an aggressive start, you want to keep that aggression up. And oftentimes an aggressive start looks like playing Guzma and Hala. And, then Cynthia and Caitlyn is your supporter for the next turn because you were able to grab it to hand, right? In mid to late game, having that option to put a boss's orders or a Raihan back into your hand is really strong. Palpad, I love playing Palpad. My Psychic deck plays Palpad. Any deck where you have a higher likelihood to see the supporters you're putting back in, with the draw of Bibarel or with the searching of Gallade. It's just so crazy strong to have the both Versus Seeker and the Palpad option to allow these big turns where you're playing, the exact supporter you need. And that's why Trevor's deck and the Pelipper work so well, because it allows you to keep up that aggressive pressure, while, with minimal effort on your part, really, to find the exact supporter you want to see. And so, yeah, those cards are fantastic, and I would highly recommend them. Honestly, the tough thing with Palpad sometimes is, actually this happened in my finals match with Trevor, is both Raihan and Mela were down, right? And I needed to find one of them that turn, and I had Palpad in the hand before I was going to Nest Dash, right? But Versus Seeker was still in deck. So it's like, do I put both in with Palpad and hope to draw into them, or do I leave one in the discard pile and maybe I draw Versus Seeker? Yeah. And the math there is kind of weird. Like, it's kind of like even. It's like either I draw into a Mela or I draw into a Versus Seeker or whatever. And I got unlucky on that option. I ended up drawing into a Versus Seeker and not finding the the Raihan or the Mela. So like that was like the one time it kind of like bit me a little bit. But when you still do have a lot of draw and you maybe don't have to find a Raihan or a Mela on that exact turn, I often do opt to leave one of them in the discard pile for that flexibility, because you can grab it back with Cynthia, Caitlyn, or Versus Seeker. And so, yeah, I like Cynthia and Caitlyn a lot. I think that value, that is something. I think the fact, if I didn't play Tag Call on this list, which you'd never not play Tag Call, but if it didn't play Tag Call, that slot would probably be Avery. Like, I like what Avery does more than I like what Cynthia and Caitlyn does, because you have so many other ways to get supporters back. But with Tag Call, it just being like another out to a supporter to draw for turn, like it's just kind of too good to not include there. So, and Mallow and Lana, I didn't necessarily want the healing, and Mallow and Lana is a supporter card where when it's not the exact right turn to use it, it's just going to clog your hand, and I really didn't want a lot of hand cloggers. I wanted a lot of cards that I could either play or that could do exactly what I needed them, or were going to draw me some cards to find what I needed. So yeah, Cynthia and Kalen's great. I actually use Cynthia and Caitlin a lot to get back Cypher Maniac, to be honest. Like, just knowing that, if it was still early on and I hadn't played Raihan or Mela yet. Actually, I played it a lot when I knew the next turn or two I was going to be attacking with Hops Cramorant, because I would grab Cypher Maniac back with Cynthia and Caitlin, and then I'm like guaranteed to find the rescue stretcher and the Hops choice band right off of Cypher Maniac. So it's like the two cards you'd want, or if another combo if you need to loop Hops Cramorant, so that combo I felt was really strong. Cypher Maniac was just allowed for such flexible plays like that. So I was getting that back a lot earlier game with Cynthia and Caitlin, if not Raihan or Mela later on. So
yeah. And I'm like looking at all the other lists so far that I've had access to. You mentioned like you got back Cypher Maniacs to prep you for that next turn. Well, no other deck that I've seen can hand disrupt and ability lock you. So if your opponents are hand disrupting you, you just got that powerful draw engine to get you back what you need to. I mean, your deck is, I'm going to reset Stamp and I got Hex. Like, you can do all the things, Counter Catcher, Hex. I mean, that was just the best part of your deck. And that's where like it feels like your deck was supreme, and it showed itself on that day. So again, like this package, this item disruption package was just bonkers. Kudos to you, Ben, and your team and all your playtesters for figuring this out, because it obviously was 100% the best call for the day.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really happy with it. So it was awesome for sure.
All right.
I was muted. I said, go team, go team. What's going to work? Teamwork.
See, I'm a Magic head. So like when I used to play Magic, I used to play a whole bunch of tempo decks. And like tempo is just like basically like early aggression plus disruption. And like it's a term that like kind of can like convey itself and like show itself in other card games. And like then your deck is a tempo deck. Like you are trying to keep up early aggressive attackers every turn, and then you got aggressive plays to put your opponent on the back foot. So when I think of your list, it's just tempo. I know that Andrew Mahone hates the word turbo. I think his quote the other day was like, whenever people put turbo for their decks, I just see bad. Hey, it's not tempo color, or it's not turbo colorless. It's tempo colorless. We changed the name. It's a good neck down. It's a good deck.
And that is an unfazed fact right there.
Unfazed. Stay unfazed.
We need a soundboard now for that.
Certified unfazed fact.
I want to get famous actor. We need to get some famous actor to voice that and just play that every time a Jim is said.
I think Lizzo would do it. Let me send her a text.
Perfect. All right, we got third place. We got Connor Cockerham's Dark list. And, Dark being one of those decks that Dark is just one of those types that's always been there. It's always kind of been, a steady. It's never been the best. It's never been the worst, but it's always been a deck that is always kind of just on the forefront, or just like right there thinking about it. And we see one right here almost taking, getting third place against 125 other players. And they're, playing the whole Spiritomb Hustle Belt combo, where you can get some early attacks, especially with this, is it Alolan Meowth that lets you hit for like 70 for free if you go first.
Oh yeah, spoil the fun, baby.
So yes, it's one of those cards that I think we even had it on one of our toxic lists as like one of the donkers. How toxic are donkers sometimes, and Dark is notorious for being one of those donking decks to where you can create a non-game, or at least get ahead really quick with its ability to use Spiritomb, Hustle Belt, Alolan Meow, Hoopa, being able to switch in and do 90 on the first turn. So we've got all these different fun cards that you can use in Dark. And I don't know if you went against this, Ben, but like whenever I go up against a Dark deck, I'm like, okay, I got to go quick, because if I don't, they're going to be able to chip away at me pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah, so this was my top 4 game up against Connor, and I was able to take it 2-0. Both games, Connor did not have kind of the optimal board state you'd want in a Dark deck. Like game 1, he was able to... Neither time did he attack on his first turn, so that was like fine with me. But he had a pretty like small bench like size like throughout both games, and was able to get a Guzzlord on game 1, but not in game 2 at all. And I think I was just kind of able to out aggress a little bit, and while also throwing in those disruption pieces. In both games, as soon as he got to 3 prizes, I was searching out that reset stamp. And in that, in the second game, I don't think he even had or in the first game, he didn't even have the Liepard up. So like, I was just like, I'm gonna knock out Guzzlord this turn and put you down to 3 cards, and you have no draw. Like, you have to find like supporters and evolutions and energy to be able to respond right now. So I was like throwing everything at him on top of him not already not having like the optimal start. And in the second game, same thing, like reset stamp to 2 while also using boss's orders to bring up the Liepard. And so that was my strategy going into it. I was like, I'm just gonna, do what I do early game, go be aggressive, and then as the game goes on, I'm just gonna throw all my disruption pieces at you. And I know that, Dark is a type that's gonna struggle with that. So luckily got out ahead of that, and luckily didn't really ever have to deal with a big Spiritomb early or an Alolan Meowth taking a knockout. So, that in that way it went into my court favorably. One card that I hadn't seen a lot of other Turbo Dark decks play before is this Yveltal.
Yeah.
With the Derail attack, which, is some special energy hate. When you use it, it says you can discard up to 3 special energies from your opponent's active Pokemon. So I imagine it's really good as like a different turn 1 option. If turn 1 your opponent like attaches double Colorless to Snorlax and passes or something, like Yveltal can really disrupt that. So I do like the choice there into a Colorless heavy meta. Just as like in GLC you like to have multiple options, because not every option is going to present itself every game. Sometimes, you have the cards in hand to do a big Spiritomb attack, and sometimes you just have the cards in hand to attach to Yveltal, right? But having those different plays to make into this colorless heavy meta, I think are, really strong. So I like that choice a lot. I'm not super familiar with, when I play Dark, I play like the more standard Dark with Galarian Weezing, so maybe you guys aren't as surprised by the Yveltal as I am. But it seems strong, like being a fast, aggressive deck that is able to keep up with both Dragon and Colorless's aggression. I think is probably what allowed Connor to get as far as he did, and it's a strong deck, so it worked out.
Yeah, and I think first off, I think Connor is from Good Games in Chicago, which is just like maybe beyond Full Group Games is like the other mecca of Gym Leader Challenge. If I had to like kind of place another place, so shout out to Good Games, and Connor, if you're not from there, sorry, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyway, as if it were a fact. But yeah, the Yveltal is really cool. It doesn't work against Unfazed Fat Snorlax because of that stupid ability, because it's just so busted. But it is really good. And we had JW on a couple weeks ago. He's famously known for winning one of those 1Ks with his Dark deck, and we were kind of questioning whether or not like is Hoopa 90 still kind of good. And when you think about all the stuff that it can do in the current format, like it seems like a great choice when you think about cleaning up a Hop Snorlax or even going into a Fan Rotom that maybe took a KO. So again, respect this list a lot. You mentioned, your list, Ben, as being super aggressive. Before Turbo Colorless was the behemoth that it's become, this was the deck that I kind of pointed to as being that tempo deck, because oftentimes you're going to see Boss or Guzma in the early turns, coupled with one of those cheap, efficient attackers. Frozen City and Old Cemetery make, Hydro Pump decks a little cautious about what they need to do, especially when those attachments can hurt themselves. So, like, this deck was kind of notorious for just, like, beating you early and often. And then, of course, it had Guzzlord to kind of, like, chip its way back in, whereas your list, Ben, had those awesome, item cards to get them back in the game. I mean, Guzzlord is just, like, power itself in one turn and come back mechanic in all in one card. So, really cool to see Turbo Dark do well. I'm always like, Galarian Weezing is so good. Like, Galarian Weezing is just so busted. So when I do see these lists, that's one of the things that I'm always like, couldn't fit it in, but I get it. It's got a big retreat cost. It's not vibing with the game plan to a certain degree, but man, that card is good, and it's hard for me not to want to put it into my dark list too. Josh, any thoughts about this Turbo Dark list from Connor? I think you're muted again, bud.
I keep coughing too much and I mute and then I forget. But other than the stuff that we have, already brought up, the only things that I can think of is we have the Weavile with the, I forget what the attack is called, but it's basically one dart you hit for 50 for every ability Pokemon that's in play. And then you have the Zoroark with the copycat attack with the double colorless. With the new Wailord that came out in Journey Together, which is like one of the big reasons, other than a few other cards that you use to take down those big guys. Other than that, it kind of like lost some of its strength against the big water decks. And luckily, for Connor and playing the dark deck, there wasn't as many of those out there. So I know that Colorless still plays a lot of ability heavy decks, and that this specific dark deck right here probably had a decent matchup against Colorless. Maybe not it kind of fell apart at the end, unfortunately for Connor, but had a good matchup against Colorless, and maybe not so much water, but with water being lower with 14 out of 125, Connor probably didn't hit as much water and probably more Colorless. So kind of helps you whenever you kind of go into your matchups throughout the day.
I will say one thing to consider with the foul plays or work. I know stand-ins or work is absolutely busted too, but one thing to consider about foul play into this kind of new meta that we were all thinking about is you could copycat Kyogre and go after the Rain Dancer, which I think maybe was in Connor's mind, because obviously special waves wheeler is busted, right? But like, now you do have like that extra security too if you can copy a Kyogre's attack, which is pretty nifty. So again, probably a thought that went through Connor's head as he was kind of doing that too. But I do agree with your assessment, Josh. It's definitely a lot weaker of a card, and I've got my stand-in ready to slot back into my dark deck right now.
We may or may not see stand-in here in a bit. Next, we got fourth place, Spencer Batten with the Dragon deck, piloting this Dragon deck right here. This is one of the, this is Dragon deck right here, plays only basics, does not play the Dragonite Fast Call, does not play Garchomp and its awesome ability, but just kind of a little bit simpler to where you don't have to worry about evolving or anything like that. You're just trying to get your Reshiram out there to get some fire energy from hand onto a Pokemon, kind of accelerate and be able to just build up your Pokemon a lot faster. Use the DDE to be able to get some more donks and be able to just get faster attacks off early on. And then you have a card that not many people think about when facing Dragon, when you kind of should, is the Kyurem. And Kyurem has that attack that also with the ability allows you to attack for an attack that costs like 5 energy costs down to 1 colorless, and it does 1/10 to 3 different Pokemon. And that can actually be like a parallel city, depending on what Pokemon or what deck you're playing against, a parallel city, but instead of to your discard hand, and that's all that happens, you got to put all your Pokemon to the discard, and then your opponent takes 3 prizes along with that. But this is only possible if you have a Colorless in your discard. So unless if you play Colorless, if you don't play Colorless, you don't have to worry about that specific ability. But if you do play Colorless, which a lot of different decks might play Colorless Experiment or just the Colorless Shuffle Draw, you have to be a little bit mindful when playing against Dragon because they might have this Kyurem in secret. But other than that, this deck did go far, go all the way to top 4. And I believe I did hear, because I wasn't able to watch everything, but I did kind of hear that the Kyurem was actually might have been the downfall of a decision made in that top 4 battle. But if you guys know any more information on that, I would love to hear. And also, look at all of these cards with signatures on them. I don't know if you guys are a fan of signatures on cards, but you should probably let me know.
Hey, Josh, I got to get a Wailord signed by you at some point, so we'll see. And Ben, I'll probably have to ship you. You'll have to ship me a maybe Hots Cramorant or something like that too. I'll send you some Ninja Boys. We'll be good. But yeah, to go to the thing. First off, let's start by talking about Spence's run. I mean, the man was undefeated, right? Like, let's just straight up say, like, undefeated, like 2-0'd his opponent in the top 8 to get to the top 4. Intentionally drew the last 2 games because he was 5-0. The only player on the day to beat you, Ben. I mean,
that is also an unfazed fact.
Yeah. So let me preface all of this by saying, like, Spencer is an exceptional player, did amazing things all day, and didn't need this card that we're going to talk about right here. So, he mentioned to everyone that the night before he was doing some late night testing and kind of cut one card. And obviously, like, when you look at this holistically, again, undefeated in the top 4. So you cannot question his decision here. And then he gets paired up against Trevor in the top 4, which I do want to say, Trevor is an amazing player. And so when you're watching Trevor make plays on stream, like, you're sitting here, you're seeing players against Trevor have enhanced hammer in play. And Trevor has double colorless energy and then, like, opts to play fire. Like, he knows what cards to play around. So again, I'm setting all of this up to say Trevor plays Colorless Tenacity in the top 4. Doesn't pal pat it back in, doesn't Pelipper it back to hand, doesn't VS Seeker. It's sitting there in the discard pile. And Spence has had a couple of bad starts. And he just needs one card, Kyurem, to get going. He cut Hisuian Heavy Ball the night before, and Kyurem is prized. So he's sitting there, and he's trying to think of, like, the play to do. You see him, like, physically on stream, like, pointing to the Colorless Tenacity, like, be like, no. And you can, like, see it. And then after that, you see maybe, like, he doesn't grab the Field Blower, I think, off of, like, a teammate that would have, like, let him maybe get a 2-prize turn and kind of potentially get him coming back. So, like, it goes kind of full tilt mode there to a certain degree. But again, think back to what I just said. Undefeated, did this all day, didn't need Hisuian Heavy Ball one time. And so afterward, he's like, I'm going to add it in. Spence, no. You stuck to your guns. You did amazing. Don't let that change your mind. It was great. But I feel really bad for Spencer in that moment because, of course, he's on stream while all of this is happening. Again, like 8 or 9 rounds in. So, again, Spence is an amazing player. Don't let those few couple turns on stream, paint the picture of what his day was like, because it was an amazing day.
Absolutely. Yep. And as you said, he was the one to beat me the whole day. And I was really hoping for him to win that top 4 because I really wanted the rematch in the finals.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. I was too. I was like, oh, that would be so cool if they really just went back into it.
That would have been so awesome. So, yeah, no, but props to Trevor, of course. But yeah, Spencer had a crazy run with a dragon deck that, was definitely a minority in the field in terms of the way Dragon was built. And I know everyone on Cardboard Warriors knows about this deck. It's on their radar. And, Spence and Lee brought it. And, Lee had a rough start, but did end up finishing at 5-2. So also just one win away from top 8 himself. And Spencer was able to carry the torch. I played against Spence on stream. Fantastic player. One of the most fun matches I had all day, despite, the way my deck functioned, just because of who he is, so great person. I'm so happy to have gotten to meet him. And yeah, so I actually haven't watched his match against Trevor, but I've heard all the horror stories, and that's rough, but the deck is sick, and I've had to walk back what I said the last time I was on the podcast about how I think dragons are overrated. And, everyone says dragons are great. I still think they're mid, like dragons came to play at the 1K and proved that they deserve a spot in the conversation at the top of the format. And Spence, is the one that led that charge all the way through to top 4. So shout out to him. The deck is really cool. Reshiram is really strong, as that extra energy acceleration. And I would have liked to have that longer series to really explore what that matchup would be like, because I don't think the game we had is really that great of a representation of a match between the two decks. So I am curious to see how that would play out if both our decks are cooking. I would be really excited. So Spence, next time.
Till next time.
I feel like this is a deck we probably need to go and talk about a little bit here, because I don't think a lot of people have maybe seen this deck. So Dragobox is the maybe official name. I think at one point it was called Dragostop when it was playing Pokestop. It's kind of evolved since then. Known for playing low amount of basics. So like you've got Reshiram that attaches fire energy to your bench Pokemon as long as Reshiram's in the active. So you're going to see some different tools here to kind of help kind of pivot in and out of this Reshiram. It's got a lot of pivots in this deck, because you also want Tatsugiri in the active, and you're going to want Regidrago in the active at different points of the game. Besides that, you've got Raging Bolt, Drujigan, and Drampa, all just like reasonable attackers. And when you pair Raging Bolt with Lost City, you can kind of cheese out some kind of wins that you wouldn't expect. Hit a Sobble on turn 1 going second, and all of a sudden your water opponent can't catch up. The thing that really impressed me all weekend watching this deck is, even without DDE in play, this deck, like the 3 times it was on stream, had attackers kind of situated at every moment, just using like Reshiram or Kiram or Raihan. And one of the reasons why is it's just got so much like precise search, but the one thing it doesn't have is innate draw power. The only draw supporter is Marnie, and that's hilarious to me. So again, just Marnie is its one way to draw cards. Obviously, like Peony, Arvin, Guzmahala, Voltner, Colorless Tenacity, Raihan, all these different search aids. But it's just got that. And then, of course, the last little bit of kind of spiciness to this list is the Dragonian Z, which is like 3 energy for a Z attack or whatever they're called. But you discard all the energy. It does 80 per energy you discarded. So kind of a cool way to, like, if you can get all those attachments in play, just like, here's a nuke. And so this deck is, again, really cool. I feel like we just needed to say what it is for people who aren't familiar with the Dragobox technology. And of course, Kiram, one of my least favorite cards, just because I think it's kind of gatekeepy in the way that it is. But I mean, these dragon lists need a comeback mechanic. And man, Kiram being able to take 3 prizes is kind of busted, especially now that Colorless is playing Hops Cramorant, because that's 110. Then you've got maybe 2 or 3 other draw supporters that you can take. So Kiram has become more versatile as Colorless has kind of evolved and changed with the printing of Journey Together. All right, all that. Sorry, let me top off. Josh, tell us about your thoughts on Dragobox.
I mean, it's just one of those super simple decks to where all you got to worry about is getting your DDE attachment, possibly, but like you said earlier, like you can do without it depending on your setup and stuff. So you got the Reshiram for the acceleration, being able to get those out on there. You got Wishful Baton to kind of help alleviate some of the stress of whenever you get knocked out. You can be able to move that down to any of your Pokemon to even set up again down there. And then you have access to Mela and Raihan, just like Colorless uses Mela and Raihan to be able to get attackers going turn after turn, depending on if you're trading for prizes and stuff. It just helps you stay afloat. And especially if you guys have like revenge attackers such as Dredagon. Dredagon is one of the best revenge attackers because it does have such a high damage output with that, as opposed to like a 120 or a 130 revenge attacker. It's a lot more helpful in being able to actually do that trade with. And then you mentioned Lost City, and Lost City with either Raging Bolt or is this the Drampa? Is that the Drampa? But that's not the regular Drampa, is it? It's not the Donk Drampa.
No, this is
I don't know.
Good Drampa.
I don't know anything about this Drampa, to be honest.
It does more damage based on colored energy attached, I think. So like it's like 3 colorless as its attack cost. So like it's less conditional in this build than like the damage counters would be from the other.
So it's kind of one of those things that you can kind of get going pretty quick as well. But like Lost City, you can be able to use Raging Bolt to knock out those little guys, like you said, with Sobble and different things like that to kind of help get yourself ahead in the matchup. Especially, you know, if it's early in the game, a lot of the time you're trying to get those little guys that turn into super amazing support Pokemon in a turn or two. If you can get those out in Lost City, then you're just trying to claw back from something that you might not be able to claw back from. But definitely a force to be reckoned with, being top 4 in against this tournament.
One of the only decks too that I know that like legit might want to go first in this format. I think we saw Spence both times on stream elect to go first because getting attachment is kind of more important at times than getting like your supporter done. So like he would just like attach and then Guzma Hall the next turn, and then all of a sudden Raging Bolt's doing 90 to the bench, or he's able to get like any of his attackers going since they all basically cost 3 energy. So it was kind of like weird to see because like he had just lost game 1 against Trevor, and then I saw him like drawing a card going, I was like, he doesn't like to go first. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense in like a really aggressive deck like this is trying to get energy, especially when you're not evolving and when you're not setting up your bench. So again, if you're looking for a deck that wants to go first, Drago Box, something to think about.
I don't even like to go first and stay.
That's insane to me. What the heck? The fact that this deck works is crazy.
Dude, I do not know how it works, but like literally the other day, Leah queued into me on Twin Leaf, and like my Sobble was just like lost zoned, and like I had just evolved into Drizzile too, so it had 90 HP. And I was like, what is happening? Just everything's just like, doof, 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 doof. I'm just like, we're done here, chat. I was like, I should have played Manaphy, but you guys know me. Always thinking about my bench bear. Sad I didn't have it that day.
Just play that Ice Cube. Just play that Ice Cube in your water deck.
Yeah. Ice Cube would have done work. How does this deck get around a basic stall deck? Like, just like if anyone had tagged Ice Cube, done. If anyone had been able to play Nidoqueen, done. Right? But no one's playing those cards, so you can play Dragon.
I wouldn't play those.
I just don't get not playing Garchomp. That's my only thing. Garchomp's just busted. Just so busted. I can't get not playing Garchomp. That's my only thing with this list. Everything about it's great. I don't get not playing Garchomp.
Next up, we got 5th place, Thomas Rowe, with a dark deck that is very, very familiar to some. It is playing Galarian Weezing, one of Jeff's favorite cards ever in existence, along with the stand-in Zoroark, which, if you are familiar with this more of a standard Guzzlord Red Banquet deck, then you would know that in the last previous GLC 1K, I believe it was the Astral Radiance that was the last 1K that we had. JW Kreewall won with a deck very similar to this deck, and here you see it again a couple years later doing work and being able to do this same, not the same exact thing because it won last time, but be able to get so close to, you know, a winning spot, even in that top 4 spot. But I am a big fan of this deck. But that being said, it's not like a deck that I would play personally. I like to have big HP, attack big, with big attacks and stuff like that. But I mean, I remember talking with JW about standing Zoroark and being like, I think it's still a powerful card, but he wasn't convinced. I was convinced it was a powerful card. But right here, you can see in 5th place that it is still a powerful card, especially with the likes of Galarian Weezing being able to just turn off all your abilities while it's in the active spot and slowly just poisoning your opponents down to nothing. And for me, Galarian Weezing is one of those cards that I hate the most. I think top 3 cards that I just dislike the most, and there's multiple different reasons why I do. And Jeff and a friend that I have are one of the reasons why I dislike this card so much. Tell us how much you love Galarian Weezing and Stand in Zoroark, Jeff.
I actually, hate Galarian Weezing. But I do play it. It's a very powerful, strong card. And if you're playing Dark, I think you should be playing it. But obviously, you can win without it. But I think it's really good. Obviously, shutting off abilities has shown to be a way to take care of Colorless. If you can deal with their draw engine, that's good for you. And Galarian Weezing can put out damage at the same time, set up some numbers on your, to set up a Guzzlord double prize turn. This deck, since Gym Leader Challenge has been a thing, and since I've been around Gym Leader Challenge, looking at where Red Banquet was then versus where it is now, very little has changed. So if you're looking for a good investment in Gym Leader Challenge, get this deck. The cool thing about this deck, which is one of the cool things about Ben's deck, is, hey, we finally have a deck that's trying to play Disruption in item form as well. So we do see Reset Stamp here. It's not paired with Hex, though, which, again, Dark's going to have a harder time finding in Hex, but I do like the Reset Stamp inclusion as well. And then, besides that, just awesome, cheap, efficient attackers. What more can you say? Dark City is a really cool inclusion. I like Dark City. This gives all your basic Dark Pokemon free retreats. I pair that with things like Hoopa or your Guzzlord, or if you get Galarian Moltres stuck in the active, which is like the bane of every single Dark player who's playing a standard Red Banquet list, right? You start Galarian Moltres, and you're like, you feel like that's basically the end of the game there. So having Dark City as another out of getting out of that terrible situation is great. I'm going to be surprised, or I'm a little surprised that 2 Dark lists with just trade Lipard did so well to make it to the top 8. That's my real, I don't think of Dark as being the most consistent type, because that's your consistency engine. So Ben, tell me I'm wrong. Obviously these 2 people showed me I was wrong, but I just don't think of Dark as being that super consistent type.
It's because they played Evo Soda over Timer Ball.
Facts. Josh has been holding that one in for 50 minutes, by the
way. In this deck, it's correct, all right? In the other deck, it wasn't.
Thanks, Ben. Always have a third. Always have a third.
Yeah, but no, Dark is really strong, and any deck that can take multiple prizes is something to consider. And Guzzlord is one of the best things to do that. And I think in this list, I'm the one I'm more familiar with compared to the more turbo version with the Hustle Belt and things like that. It honestly feels like most games Guzzlord's going off, so that's already a huge advantage. The deck is really strong at powering up Guzzlord with things like, so this list is pretty interesting to me, though, because while it is one I'm more familiar with, I think there's some noticeable exclusions. One being TM Turbo Energize is not here, which I think is one of your best early plays when you bench Guzzlord turn 1, attaching 2 energy. What more could you ask for, if you're not taking a knockout with Hoopa? So I am surprised to see no TM Turbo Energize and instead seeing a heavier count of HP tools. And while Reset Stamp also is really good, I'm surprised to see it over something like Enhanced Hammer that I feel like a majority of decks were trying to play. So some interesting choices. In my opinion, obviously still did great and was able to carry it all the way up to top 8. And that's just the power of the Dark deck. Galarian Weezing wins you a lot of games, and Guzzlord can win you a lot of games. And I'm sure those were the 2 of the big key players in Thomas's run. I'm not sure. I actually don't know him. I don't think we talked at all. We didn't play each other. But man, dark sometimes just has it like that, and you can never really count them out. So solid list, room to play. Room to play with it. You can swap some of these cards in and out with what meta you're expecting, and you'll do good. Like it's a really strong deck. So I am surprised to see 2 dark decks in the top 8. I am not surprised to see 1 dark deck in top 8, if that makes sense. I do think dark is still really strong. So
yeah, it's in my homie's top 3, which again really surprises me as someone who's been playing quite frequently as of late. But again, it's strong and powerful. So, Josh, to you.
Yeah, to your point about Turbo Energize, that was one of the first things that I noticed was that it's not played in this. It wasn't played then because it wasn't a thing, but now it is. But one of the things that maybe it was not played for was you can play it with if the Galarian Wheezing is prized, but maybe this person was thinking, hey, I always want to try to get that ascension off on the coughing to be able to get into wheezing a lot quicker, and maybe just was like, okay, I'm always going to go for that play, and I'm going to try to get Guzzlord set up, and chose some more HP boosting tools for the more tankiness effect, or being able to get 2 prizes, possibly tank an attack or 2, maybe hopefully get another 2 prizes. By then the Lux Cape with taking two prizes when you get knocked out kind of evens out a little bit more. But to your point, yes, Energize definitely could find a spot in this deck, but we just have to figure out what the cut and what the switch out.
Yeah, I actually think that Turbo Energize plus Galarian Wheezing is busted, right? Because when I play it, there's usually a turn where you've Ascensioned and now you've poisoned and they've passed back unable to do anything and you can't re-poison again, right? So having the option to just be here's Turbo Energize on my Guzzlord and have a secondary threat is just so busted. So that's my thought. Obviously, it is a very high rolly card, right? Hey, Turbo Energize is either going to be really good or I'm just never ever going to play it the entire game. So again, I totally get not playing it, but that's always a line of play that goes through my brain when I'm thinking about playing Galarian Wheezing. And again, Josh, I know you don't like the card. So now here's another reason for you not to like it.
No, I like Galarian Wheezing. It's a great card. I just have had personal problems against this card.
Okay. So I'm just picturing you ascending and doing your deck check, and just every single time Galarian Wheezing's I'm pressed, bro. Sorry, not for you. Not for you. Your opponent always has it, not you.
Yeah, my opponent always has it. I never have it because I don't necessarily play dark, but my opponent always has this card, and it's always shutting off my abilities.
I'm telling you, that's why you play the double Wheezing technology. You can play 2 Wheezings that evolve from the same coughing. Just play them both, baby.
Ban Galarian Wheezing. All right, 6th place, we have the famous Lightning Spread deck. As Ben said before, we had 4 players from Full Grip Games play this specific Lightning Spread list. I don't know if it's the same 60 or not, but definitely opted to play Lightning Spread. And we got Cole Stiletto at 6th place playing Lightning Spread. And one of the first things that comes to mind whenever I see this right here is the lack of Raichu. I know some people don't necessarily like the Raichu that does 50 to everything if there's damage counters on there. I'm a big fan, but I do see that there were some other decisions made that maybe got the cut and were able to put in different cards, such as the little Morpeko right there. I can't remember exactly what it does, but I know that Morpeko has a pretty decent attack, and then also maybe opted to put in the Battle VIP pass as well, and that was kind of found some space there, which Battle VIP pass is another one of those high row cards that I really like consistency, and it's a good card if you consistently get it, but it's not a card that you can consistently get. So Battle VIP pass for me is one of those cards that it's almost like a timer ball in a sense to me, where I'm oh man, everybody has their different styles of playing as well. But spread was definitely one of those calls going into this tournament that was, it's not a bad call at all. You're playing against a bunch of different decks such as water, and then we know that Colorless, Psychic all have like little guys that you can pick off using different styles of spread decks. And Electivire having such an awesome attack where it's 2 lightning, 1 colorless, you can hit for 50 for everything that all the Pokemon that are out there. And one of the I believe it was Kyogre that got banned hits 80 to everything, and Electivire is like not far off of that damage output really. It's less powerful damage, but you're still hitting 50 for everything, which is still quite good. And if you can get that again, that's 100 damage to everything. And that's just where you can kind of see some of the power going if you're able to get that twice. And then you got, of course, Tapu Koko, which is such a great card with the free retreat and be able to flying flip for 2 colorless to 20 to everything as well. So there's all sorts of ways to get spread out onto the table, especially with such a simple stadium such as Silent Lab to be able to turn off bench barriers. But there's really not too many decks that are either playing bench barriers or even have bench barriers. So I'm a really big fan of Lightning and Lightning Spread. I actually have Lightning Spread built myself, and I play it from time to time. And it's just one of those decks that it's just kind of fun to come back to. You have lots of decisions. There's just a bunch of different things that you can go about. It has a lot of skill involved with it. But I know that, Ben, that you've seen this deck probably in action quite a bit, especially on those testing nights. Tell us about some of the choices that were put into this Lightning Spread list.
Yeah, so this is like the same 60 that Alex and Hunter have been playing for over a year now. Outside of Kofu was cut for the weekend, and I think Andrew finally got to them. Like Professor Oak word echoing in my head, like, don't play that right now.
There's a time and place for that.
Exactly. And I think they both said after the tournament that they regret cutting it.
Dude, I see it so hard right now too. Like when I was looking through this deck list, I was like, dude, you're playing Counter Catcher and Enhanced Hammer, and you're gonna sprint those away when you can't use them. Like, you need Kofu. Well,
the added card was N. So it is another shuffle, to preserve those resources, and it disrupts your opponent a little bit in the process. But I think Hunter was saying that like it kind of goes against the spirit of the deck when you're trying to just draw forward a little bit. So I think maybe Kofu is a little bit justified, and they know the deck better than anyone, so I'm trusting them. But yeah, the deck is really solid. Yeah, no Raichu. I kind of agree, I'm going off of what they tell me. I trust their decision. They do tons of testing with it. They say Raichu it's a much less flexible version of Electivire that takes up 2 slots. And if your opponent is playing more conservatively and not benching a lot of things, they could bench a couple things that have no damage counters on them, and Raichu's not hitting them, right? So there are definite downsides to Raichu while still being a powerful card. And in a lot of the games that I've seen Alex and Hunter play, it's actually they are able to reestablish Electivire sometimes 3-4 times in a game. Being able to recover it hasn't been a huge issue, I think, for them. So if you go like Electivire into Regieleki after it gets KO'd into another Electivire, like that's enough to kind of just like win games. And so that's like where their head's at, is like focus on Electivire first. Regieleki is the, kind of like the sweep, cleanup of something big in the active while also taking some knockouts. Yeah, so if you attack with Electivire twice and maybe Regieleki twice, odds are you're winning that game. So at that point, Raichu maybe not super necessary while still being powerful. But yeah, the deck is really solid. Like I said, I was really scared to face up against this with my Colorless deck. It does have a pretty strong Colorless matchup, so in a big field of Colorless, I think it was a strong choice, and I'm very happy it wasn't played more than with these guys. And props to Cole for picking it up and taking it all the way. And unfortunately, I think things kind of just fell apart a little bit in his top 8 match. It was on stream. If I didn't watch, but again, I just heard like it just wasn't really drawing super hot. So unfortunate way to go. But yeah, if you're interested in a spread deck, I would say this is the best one right now. So
yeah,
I
have to agree.
I think Jeff and I are also speed demons. Not speed demons, spread demons.
Josh, is that something we need to talk about? Sorry. All right, but yeah,
nope.
This list is busted. I mean, I've watched Alex Carpenter, or at least like followed his run with this deck for a long time now, and he and I disagree. I'm going to play Raichu just because I like Raichu a lot. And Ben mentioned it being a 2-card spot, but it's like really like a 3-card spot, because I think if you are going to play Raichu, you have to play the 10 damage everywhere minimum to actually make your Raichu like a reasonable like play on turn 2. So it's like you're throwing more fire into the mix. So I'm really missing out on this Morpeko. And Josh brought up the Morpeko. The Torment is basically like a disable effect. So if you really need a stall mechanic, which a lot of these spread style decks sometimes can miss a turn here or there, that's really busted. And then the second attack is like 50 to the active plus 30 to the bench. So like it is useful just beyond that. So I really like this Morpeko a lot. We've seen like, I think Dino's list that won NAIC this last year was running the other Morpeko that like looks at the top card sort of deal. Just as like more outs to like Battle VIP Pass. And when you look at this deck, you mentioned Battle VIP Pass too, Josh. I know I'm a known hater of that too. And Ben, you didn't include it in your Turbo Colorless list, which has been kind of like a staple in those style of lists. So this deck just has so many outs to it. I mean, Arven, Voltner, Greens, drawing into it naturally. So plus it's bad in your hand, just sprint it away with Zebstrika. So again, I love all these different lines that this list has. The issue with me is always this. Number one, is Zebstrika a prize, or is it KO'd? And I feel like you're just losing those games. And that's really like the only problem this deck has. If it had a secondary draw engine that was as good as Zebstrika, it'd be great. But it's just missing that second piece. And even if you're missing that second piece, your bench is full of Dynamotors. So could you even fit it into your deck? And so that's always my issue with Lightning Spread and just Lightning as a type in general. That's why I like Kofu. Or keep those resources in this style deck. But no, this deck is sick, and kudos to Alex Carpenter for his work on it, and Hunter too, and then Cole for piloting it. My understanding, Ben, and you can maybe verify this, is like Cole was like just on like a different deck, and then all of a sudden, kind of like last minute, it was like, hey, what 6 are you guys running? And kind of got it from them, right?
Basically, I mean, Cole works at Full Grip and actually doesn't play weekly GLC anymore. So he played a lot more in the previous season. So he's actually, I think it was just he didn't really have a deck choice. And he just was like, yo, hand me a deck. And they were like, yo, play this. And so he was like, bet. But Cole's a great player. He's got the skill to jump in and pilot it well. So props to him.
Ship it.
Yeah, Cole was one of the guys that I played it against whenever I went there in September, and he was playing a Red Banquet Guzzlord deck. And it came down to the last few turns. I think we had went to time, and he got me. I was like, oh man, just needed one more turn. And that's always the case, isn't it? You always need one more turn.
Just
next
more evidence of slow play, by the way, Josh. Went to time.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. I'll say it. I am a slow player, and that's not on purpose. So don't hurt me.
We appreciate you. We just get to spend more time with you when we play. That's all I think about. It's like, yes, I get to spend 50 plus extra minutes with Josh. Let's do it.
Yeah, I've got a thing called time blindness, and it affects everybody near me as well. Everybody else gets time blindness, so we'll just do things forever. But what we have next is 7th place, Joseph Novak. We got the new Wailord. We got a Hydro Pump water list. And, I mean, besides the new Wailord, which is just a perfect slot in from the old Waterville, Waylord. This new Waylord, again, it's been just reiterated and reiterated. It has 240 HP, hits 10 plus 50 per water energy on there. It takes 4 energy to get going, so you're hitting 210 whenever it's up and ready, and then 260 whenever you put a fifth one on there. So this guy can hit pretty hard. But I mean, other than that, to me, I can't see anything that really sticks out to me besides maybe this Tate and Liza here that you don't necessarily might see in a hydro pump water list, where it has the ability to where you can choose whether to switch your active out or shuffle draw 5. But I am just a big enjoyer of the big whale. This is kind of what my list, whenever I was playing water early on, it was more towards a hydro pump, and then it kind of slowly, as cards got released, turned into a special whales list. And I'm just a big fan of the new Waylord. I actually traded this last weekend. I went to a league challenge and was able to get one of the art card for the new Waylord. Traded for it, and now we got it. We got that good looking guy now, that handsome boy. But other than that, guys, what do you see in this specific water list?
Yeah, so the pretty straightforward hydro pump list. I would say the 2 cards that really separate it from other hydro pump lists would be the inclusion of Acerola, which is a supporter that says if any of your Pokemon have damage counters on them, you can just pick it up and all the cards attached and put it into your hand. So that includes all the energy. If you have 5 energy on Wailord, and odds are they're not one-shotting your Wailord, so you can just pick that bad boy up, make that damage negligent, and pump all that energy back into play with Baxcalibur and Frostmoth. So a pretty strong tech there. I'm sure it came in handy a lot for Joseph throughout the course of the weekend. I know my colorless deck does not play any way to one-shot a Wailord. The game plan is to go around it or to two-shot it. And, I would have hated to see an Acerola come down if I had decided that trying to two-shot it was the move. So cool inclusion there. And then Pot Helmet, not something you would normally see in a Hydro Pump deck, I think. Something you'd see in something playing Special Whales, or even the Seismitoad deck as some damage reduction. But it does make your guys a little tankier. I can even see a route where you put it on your Baxcalibur and give it effectively 180 HP or 190, I think, to put it out of range of some attacks and maybe discourage your opponent from gusting it. So a little bit more survivability techs for this Hydro Pump deck, but overall fairly standard. Frostmoth and Baxcalibur, play the Alolan Vulpix and that Kyogre and Wishy-Washy, and just go to town. Set up your guys and go to town, do big damage, and hope to survive some hits.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously Joseph did great on the weekend, but I just look at this deck and I'm like, no Manaphy? Why? Like, no Manaphy and no Rough Seas, right? So, like, I don't know. I kind of thought that Lightning Spread might be kind of a bigger player than it was going into the weekend. And I think that Water actually has a very reasonable matchup into Lightning Spread, just because of the fact that you do have a bench barrier that's pretty decent to play, and you do have a pretty good weakness spread amongst your Pokemon too. Like Baxcalibur is metal, Octillery is grass, so you have kind of these weird things going on with your deck list too. So again, no Manaphy, no Rough Seas is a little bit of surprising to me, but I get it, and obviously it paid off. I love Wishy-Washy as kind of just a stall mechanic. Very rarely do I ever see Wishy-Washy come into the active and just start taking KOs. It's kind of just I don't have a lot to do this turn. I'm going to put it up here, let it take some damage, then maybe it shuffles itself back into my deck, and then I just get to kind of conserve the resources I've put into it, or I've just kind of stalled myself from losing another prize and kind of can go forward. So cool list, love the list, love to see that at least someone believed in Journey Together's Wailord. Not a lot of it in this top 8, but again, hey, Hydro Pump Water, a classic, and glad to see it sticking on top to a degree.
Yeah, that's crazy. I really like this new Wailord. I think it deserved a little bit more love, but it's okay.
I don't know, dude. Every time I've been playing Water recently, when I've been playing against it, I just pick it apart. Because I'm taking apart the Rain Dancers, or I'm taking apart the Consistency Engine, or the Wailord doesn't even come into play because I'm just playing Galarian Articuno in my Psychic list, and I'm 120 sniping the bench on repeat. So it doesn't matter. So I just that's where I'm like, play your bench bear, because like snipe is just gonna destroy you, right? And then like you need to have a way to deal with like ability lock to some degree, and like it just doesn't yet. Like Palafin is a good way to kind of get around that. You can like take a KO, and that's cool. The Lapras is a decent way, but I just don't know, man. Like I think that it's just been meta for so long that we just all know how to play around it and beat it. And I think that's what Water's downside is to me at the moment, is that we all just know what to expect, and it's really good, but we all know how to play it and play against it.
So now what we have to do is we got to put Blastoise in there too, along with Baxcalibur and Frostmaw. So we have 3 energy accelerants.
No. Hear me out on this. I think it is technically correct to start playing Blastoise again, just because the Squirtle has bench protection. I can't tell you how many times, like Raging Bolt, Hitmonlee on turn 2, Ninetales and Fire. Like when I won my Fire badge like the week before, I played 3 water decks and beat 2 of them. Like you just need to like protect your boys on the bench, and when you set up, you win. So like just like playing that Squirtle that can protect itself, I think is optimal at the moment. So hear me out on that. That's where my brain's at.
To be honest, I kind of like that.
Yeah,
that's smart.
Every like now and then, I have like a pretty good idea. So yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah,
Ninja Boy might not be it, but hear me on the Squirtle, guys.
Better buy your secret rare Deluge Blastoise while they're cheap.
Before this podcast, I bought 10 of them. So if you guys want, let me know.
I wish that was true. All right. Then we got 8th place. We got Brooke English in with this Psychic Monkey Dory deck. I believe that she gave credit to Z-Man Cuddles, who kind of pioneered this Monkey Dory Psychic deck. And it's just one of those decks that can kind of do work, chip away with Monkey Dory, hit with the size shot with the Articuno, be able to get use Xatu and Malamar to be able to get quick energy out from both your hand for extra draw with the Xatu, or Malamar straight from the discard pile. Get a Latios powered up, hit for 180, discard that energy, but then just put it right back on there pretty easily. This deck is just one of those like I said before with Psychic is just one of those more well-rounded decks, and with the added ability Buddy Catch from Gallade, it just kind of gives you the ability to be able to pick and choose what you're doing on what turn and how you're going to do it. And I always enjoy seeing a Psychic deck with a Muscle Band in it, because it gets you numbers, and it always surprises me, actually. I don't know why it surprises me every time, but I'm like, Muscle Band in a Psychic deck, what's up with that? And then I get, I usually end up not having a fun time, straight up. But other than that, what do you guys think about this?
I mean, every time I see a Psychic list like this, I'm just like, how do you ever hit, like, yeah, you mentioned Muscle Band, but like you're still not hitting that 230 number without Hex, or you're still not hitting like the 240 of the new Wailord. So like that's like my biggest thing is like, can these Psychic decks, which have it all, I mean, Psychic is just the most versatile type. Obviously got so much worse. Like I don't think all of us expected it to get so much worse after Marshadow's banning, but man, I tell you, if your Kirlia goes, it's like, what are you doing in this deck sort of deal? So this list obviously has the Mysterious Tail Mew as kind of some added consistency, and that's where I think these Psychic lists need to kind of switch to and pivot. Like we need better starters. You see Mahone's list playing Cleffa and Smoochum. You see this list playing the Mysterious Tail Mew. It's like we're kind of adapting, but like still, Kyria Glade goes down. It's like, oh, this is going to be a rough day. So I really like that from this list. Monkey Dory kind of becomes a muscle band, right? Like if you're looking for those numbers to be hit. And so I'm wondering what Monkey Dory did on the day, if it was still worth the spots, considering what the other matchups looked like. But honestly, I just love this list, and everything about it is so cool and versatile. Crispin for extra attachments. You've got colorless and a lot of these energy costs. So having that extra dark energy is kind of cool. Just having access to, all these awesome tech cards in the form of supporters like Avery or Birdkeeper if you need to switch out Hex Maniac on command. I mean, Buddy Catch Clay is just so good. So I love this deck. Ben, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love Psychic. I'm a known believer in Psychic, and I personally stay away from Monkey Dory because it's a lot of extra cards. You have to play Dark Energies and you have to play the Monkey. So it's a couple slots that to commit to this game plan.
Yeah.
Brook was my top 8 match, and surprisingly, so I was anti-Monkey, and surprisingly, through the course of our match, I kind of became convinced that Monkey is the better choice. It's less consistent because you have these extra slots. But assuming your deck is functioning, I think Monkey is better into Colorless than without Monkey, because it allows you the ability to take out the Squovit over the course of 2 turns for that extra prize. And, having a turn where you do take 2 prizes against Colorless can be really huge, on top of throwing things like Wobbuffet at a Hop Snorlax that attacked, or, searching out Hex Maniac with Gallade. So I do think this deck was pretty strong into Colorless. And I'm a big fan of how Brooke played. I thought she was a great player. I was really impressed with our matches, and I do think that had I lost, I could really see Brooke being the one to take the tournament down. Because that's honestly, the deck felt, even in times where I felt like I had a dominant position, this deck was able to swing attacks out from places I assumed that it would not be able to. If it only had Malamar up, or if it only had Xatu up or something, and then because you play the Dark Energies, it has tools like Crispin to get extra attachments down. And so there were turns where she'd go from no energy on board to 2 energy on her Latios, while also putting 2 energy down with Articuno when it's benched and attaching it to it and sniping my Bibarel. So on a turn where I was like, okay, you're not doing anything, you go from 0 to 50 real quick, and all of a sudden I'm on the back foot. So this deck does have that surprise factor. I think Articuno is a great card that I've in more recent months come around to including, because I think it's just incredibly strong, as that surprise factor. So yeah, I was impressed with this list. Shout out Z-Man for cooking it up, and Brooke for being a great pilot. I still do think the Monkey is less consistent than I would like it to be. So I probably wouldn't choose to play it, but it is really strong for the Squovit, I will say.
You definitely made a strong case for the deck, because I too am not the biggest Monkey fan, but you almost made me a Monkey fan just talking about it.
It can surprise you, and I continuously was surprised throughout the course of our 3 games. We did finish 3 complete games. I won the first game, she won the second game. And throughout the whole set, this deck was throwing out things that I believed I had played around, and something would happen that just got her right back in the mix. And I'm like, man, actually now I can see a route where she's right back in it, and I'm the one struggling. So that's, you can never really count Psychic out, because it just has so many flexible tools. And this deck with the Monkey is the most flexible kind of deck. It's just a little less consistent than I would prefer for a Psychic deck. So I usually opt to go full Psychic as opposed to the Darks. But yeah, the Monkey can get in there for sure.
Yeah, definitely surprising moments can be had. I know that in the past, whenever I go up against a Psychic deck, they could just pull something out of nothing, and it's crazy, and it gets you every time. And like I said, Muscle Band surprises me, but it's just those turns where you said they go from 0 energy to 5 energy, like that. And by then, sometimes you might be, out of the count. So yeah, Psychic is just one of those decks that you have to be on your toes on when playing against.
Something that has to be said just because of who I am as a person. Hey, they are playing Monkey, but they are also playing Bench Bear. So I really like that kind of inclusion there as well. You mentioned Skwovet, and Skwovet's always on my mind because it's always Bench in the Colorless matchups. I kind of would have liked to have seen maybe the other Mew, the Bench Bear Mew, because like then you're a Monkey plus like Dimension Value Mew into like free attack plus attachment. Like there's a lot of different like cool lines that you can do with the other Bench Bear Mew. Obviously, consistency needs to happen. I get playing Mysterious Tail Mew, but just thinking about those sorts of lines as I'm looking at this deck list, because that's what Psychic is. It's just lines, buddy. You get to pick them, you get to choose them, and you get to figure them out as you play. And as you're playing with this deck, or like a deck like this, like just new things will pop into your head as you're playing it, and it's just so cool to see too. So I'm glad we got your insight, Ben, on it, especially about your matchup. That's cool to see. Gotta find out from Brooke. I bet Brooke is gonna write a report for us somewhere. I would love to hear a report on how this Monkey list did, especially since this is the only Psychic list that I really know about from the 125 players that played.
I don't know if this was said or not, but maybe I think the choice of the Mr. Mime over the other Mew was because this specific one had, I'm pretty sure, does the other Bench Bear Mew have 60 HP?
Yeah,
I think that was the choice.
Yeah, if you're worried about
that was why the choice was made.
Because like that's like Coke for Gigas or like Silent Lab, Hitmon, Top. Trying to think what else. Maybe Silent Lab,
Raging Bolt.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. But if they're sniping your Mew, that's kind of what I've always kind of felt. If they're like sniping your Mew, I'm kind of okay with it. Like you didn't snipe my Kirlia. Like I just need my Kirlia to survive one more turn. This is usually how I feel about these decks. So that's where my brain goes. Bench Bear Mew is just so good. Like it's just
you took my bait.
Yeah, but I mean, Mysterious Tail Mew is also really good. So you can only play one.
That's true too. We needed this to be Shining Mew. We needed this to be Shining Mew instead of what we got with Shining Mew. I would pay $40 to be able to play both of those.
Oh, 100%. But that right there brings us to all the top 8 of that. And this is what happens when you find out what's in Hop's bag. When you find out what's in Hop's bag, is that the reason? Ben, do you know the story behind this right here? I would love to know.
I don't. I mean, I know this was captured on like a background moment on Andrew's stream. Craig was just in the back while Andrew was panning around the room at one of our local nights, but I could not tell you what was going through Craig's mind at the moment.
All right, viewer challenge. Caption this in the comments below. What was said to Craig? What did he find out in this moment? Let us know in the comments. We got to know. I want to hear what people have to say. For me, it's obviously Raging Bolt Lost City just happened. That's what happened here. That's the face I make.
But yeah, I think one of my favorite moments was just Ben just destroying his opponents and just thinking through everything. It was just really awesome to see everybody have so much fun there, and it looked like the atmosphere was just full of, friendly competition, but at the same time, just like nobody holding back. It was just everybody going full force. Let's go. We're going to see who the best is today. And it was really fun to watch. Do you guys have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I love, like you said, I love that we had 1Ks returning. I love that we got to see like the full send of competitiveness that is behind this. 34 players aren't going to show up with Colorless unless they think it's the best deck, unless they think they're going to win. And that's what we got to see. And we get to see, Mahone play Conquest on stream, or we get to see Badge Nice. And the badge system is great, but the badge system does mean that your better players are going to be playing different brews every single week. And it's not necessarily going to be the best deck or their favorite deck. And that's what this was. That was this moment, is you got to see 125 players bring what they thought would win them $1,000. And obviously, Ben, you chose the right one.
Yeah, no, it was just a whirlwind of a weekend. Couldn't be happier, of course, with how it went. So it was super fun. I highly recommend anyone who's thought about making the trip out to come out. It's the tournaments are really smooth. It's a great environment to be in. Every card you could ever want to buy is in stock. And you got the bar upstairs, you got the Indian restaurant, you got everything you got the new candy store. It's awesome. So, just a great environment. Great to chat with people who came out, and meet people who made the trip and who are just as passionate about GLC. It was a really fun time. I'm really grateful for all the support I had and for all the full group locals and everyone I've tested with and played with and just had fun with. So great community, great weekend. I'm gonna take the next one as well.
You heard it here first. He called it Babe Ruth.
Yeah, we
in center field.
Yeah, we already know the date for that one, right? I think June 1st is the
1st.
Sunday that the GLC event. Obviously, there's a standard event on Saturday, but who cares? It's June 1st, that JLC event. So I'll be rooting for you again, Ben. I think that's like summer for me. Like school has just ended, and then I think I'm going on vacation. So I probably won't be making that one either, but I'll be thinking about it.
Someday we'll make it. Ben, before we get off, tell anybody who doesn't know where to find you.
Sure, you can find me on YouTube at Morse Makes. You can see my name right there. I make GLC content when I can. And I will be releasing a video in the next week or two about the run. I vlogged while I was there, so get some behind the scenes footage, my thoughts in the moment, some player interviews that are cool, and should be a fun video, so keep your eyes out for that. And I tweet out deck lists sometimes or thoughts on the X app Twitter, also at Morse Makes. And if you're interested in some GLC deck lists, what's performing well, how things are going at Full Grip Games, you can check out my website, morsemakes.com, where I track all of our standings and post all of the winning deck lists there. So if you're looking for something, check them out. And that's about it.
Sweet beans. And I'm super excited for that video that you're going to have. I think that new format that you have is really awesome, and I'm excited to kind of get wind of it and see it. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Get your GLC on, get better. Learn your outs and what you have in your deck. Don't forget to prize check. Remember to stay thankful, and we'll see you later.